Busy room.
The special meeting of the Annapolis City Council on Monday, July 22nd, 2019 will be called to order at 7 p.m. At this time, would everyone willing and able please stand for the invocation given by Alderman Paone, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, everyone. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for this gathering. Please let us have a civil exchange of ideas so that we may do your work as we see your work to be. In your name we pray. Amen.
After the pledge, we have a special treat. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do-do-do.
Come around this side of the table. Yeah.
Tiki.
We'll face it this way, okay? It's the new Annapolis boy band. How you doing? Good.
I'd like to introduce, the name of the group is Z-Boys. This is an upcoming group, and I hope you'll enjoy it. I did. Okay.
No, sir. You're going to stand.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we have at the twilight's gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the rampart we watch, when sun gallantly streaming in the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free, and our home of the
That's awesome. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley,
Here.
Alderwoman Tierney, Alderman Payon,
Here.
Alderwoman Pennell Charles,
Here.
Alderman Finlayson.
Present.
Alderman Rodriguez. Alderman Gay.
Here.
Alderman Savage.
Present.
Alderman Arnett.
Present.
Ms. City Attorney, please present the first item on the agenda.
First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
At this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended to add R40-19, Classic Wooden Boat Rendezvous and Race docking fee waiver on first reader to tonight's agenda, and to remove AP 59-19, the appointment of Peggy Townsend to the Ethics Commission from tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Ms. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
The next item on the agenda is ceremonial items, the City Council citations, beginning with ID 54019, Sarah Ironman.
Okay, Rhonda, is that this one here? If Sarah could come forward, please. Rhonda and I will come forward. Yes.
City Council citation to Sarah Ironman. On behalf of the citizens of the City of Annapolis, we're pleased to confer upon you the City Council citation in recognition of work for the Stanton Community Center through the Anne Arundel County Workforce Development Center. Through your work, you have served more than 16 community members seeking employment-related services, addressed barriers to employment for 85 people, helped nearly 24 obtain new employment, and provided workshops on topics including computer literacy, financial education, job search, interview techniques, and job readiness. Your contributions to the residents of the City of Annapolis are not only admired and lauded, but sincerely appreciated. We take this opportunity to acknowledge your personal and professional commitment to the betterment of our city. Thank you very much. Given under our hands in the Great Seal of the City of Annapolis this 26th day of July, 2019, signed by our Mayor, Gavin Buckley, and all members of the City Council. I just want to add that Anne Arundel Workforce Development Corporation started in the Stanton Community Center back in March of last year. So this was prepared as of 1 year. Since that time, the numbers have exploded, but we did not include that on the citation. But we thank Sarah for her continuing commitment to our City of Annapolis, One Annapolis.
Next up is Watermark. And there's, have Watermark on.
We're looking for the citation for Watermark.
Yep. Is there a Watermark for a citation here?
I will look. Do you want to do this one first?
Do you have Watermark?
Watermark.
Sit down.
It's coming.
I'm Debbie Goslin from Watermark, and we just want to appreciate the Annapolis Police Department Foundation. We hosted a fundraiser for them and appreciate all the work that the police department does and the foundation does for them. So, thank you.
Let's have more music.
She's putting something up. Just be a couple of minutes, so thank you again. Do you want to elaborate?
This is a very fun cruise. Debbie has supported the scholarship fund as well as the foundation
Okay.
through the cruise with the puppies, as well as all the prize winnings and cash donations towards the scholarship.
And how much money did you guys raise?
For the scholarship, that was $20,000.
We can say. Gavin, it's okay. We can say. We got this email.
We thought it was going to be a quiet night tonight.
We would have brought more singers.
Yeah, so let's just set this up for a second. Okay.
Debbie, she's gonna give you one and we'll swap the right one.
Thank you. Flawless transition there. It's for Watermark Cruises. On behalf of the citizens of the City of Annapolis, we are pleased to confer upon you the City Council citation in recognition of work supporting the Annapolis Police Foundation and the Annapolis Police Department. You most recently helped by hosting a fundraising canine cruise. Got to bring my 3 dogs on the next one of those to support community programs on the Harbour Queen. Your captain and crew hosted Sergeant Tucker and his dog Pico from the Annapolis Police Canine Unit as a gold sponsor of this fun event. Thank you so much. Given under the hand and great seal of the City of Annapolis on the 22nd day of July 2019. Thank you. Let's get out of here. Thank you. Good evening, guys. Good to see you. Thank you. Tonight, I confer upon the Robinwood Funk Mob. I need everyone to come forward. That would be Majestic Goff, Armand Willis Jr., Chris McGraw, Garrett Snoops, Randy Guile, Michael McCumbo, Terrence Wright, and Traquan Trainaham, along with assistant coach John Spencer and team scout Sharika Garcia. Now we have a citation for everyone, so I might get Mitchell to come and hand these out. Thank you. Would you like to read the citation, Fred?
Sure, absolutely. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, fellas. On behalf of the citizens of the City of Annapolis, we are pleased to confer upon you the City Council citation in recognition of your team bringing home the Queenstown Basketball Classic Trophy for the City of Annapolis. Congratulations. Your team is making Annapolis proud. The Robinwood Funk Mob played for years as a team sponsored by the late Mike Bush. With his passing, the team took a year off from league play but participated in the Saturday, July 13th, 2019 Tournament Festival in Queenstown in his honor. You have any idea how hot it was that day? Your 76-71 victory over the Maryland All-Stars would have made Speaker Bush very proud. Congratulations,
Wow.
one and all from the City Council. Great job, guys.
All right.
Why don't you put that right in the middle? Let me get
Put that
that
up front here. Thank you. Can everyone, we'll spread out a little bit here so we can get in. Yeah. All right, congratulations. Thank you. Okay, cool. Fred, they can do a presentation, yeah.
On behalf of the Severn Improvement Association, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our president, and she will now award the championship trophy.
And whose kids hasn't she taken care of in our lives? Come on.
Okay. And I would like to present this year's, this is our first annual MVP award. And it goes to Mr. Randy Gill, AKA White Chocolate. We've had a championship team win this award 4 or 5 years in a row. And then along came Randy Gill. Okay? Scored a triple-double, 31 points, 11 boards, and 14 assists. So he took them out. Okay? Next year's, he took my league to a different level because nobody had beat this team, Maryland All-Stars. Every year they were winning. Like I said, along came Randy, okay?
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. That's for the city of Annapolis. You know, shout out to you.
Okay, remember, January 11th next year, I want to see some of you up there to push him on.
We represented the city of Annapolis. Mike Bush used to sponsor this team when he was living, and I called upon Fred and Gavin for the sponsorship of this team for this year, and we would like to present championship hat. All right. And thank you, Fred. And we also would like for this trophy, we can have it for 1 year to stay at the city hall to be on display somewhere. So that's on you, Gavin. Find a spot. And I'm gonna say the famous words. I'm gonna say the famous words of Joe Namath. I guarantee next year we'll keep it for another year. Yeah.
We'll leave this up here. Oh, no, sure. Should leave it up. See you later.
Let me see that.
The city attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
The next item on the agenda is petitions, reports, and communications, beginning with an update from the mayor.
Okay. Good evening. This was going to be our last city council meeting until Labor Day. It was going to be. But I snuck in an extra meeting on July 31st at 3 p.m. I am pleased that during last Thursday's work session, we were able to nominate our new public safety team for your consideration. Some of you have had an opportunity to meet with my nominees for Police Chief, a nominee for Police Chief Edward Jackson, and the reports so far have been very positive. I look forward to the confirmation hearings for Mr. Jackson alongside my two other nominees, both of whom you already know, Kevin Simmons of OEM, Director, and my nominee for Fire Chief, Doug Romali. By the time we reconvene in September, we should have all three in place. To the general public, I would like to invite you to a community meeting to meet our team, including the new police chief, and to help you reacquaint yourself with Acting Director Simmons and Deputy Chief Romali. That meeting is at Pip Moyer Recreation Centre on July 29th at 7 p.m. The format will be informal. We will have each nominee at a table for intimate conversation, and every 5 minutes or so, we'll allow people to rotate and go to the next table in a kind of a round robin style. Again, that's July 29th at 7 p.m. at the Pip Moyer Rec Centre. I would be remiss without acknowledging tonight one person who has served our community for the past decade, keeping our residents safe. He is retiring from a storied career in firefighting and public safety. While he doesn't officially retire from the city until the end of August, he has already departed and is using up his accrued leave. Please let us all take a moment to thank our awesome Fire Chief, David Stokes, for his service to the city. Speaking of public safety, I would like to acknowledge someone from our community who is not part of any official public safety team, but he did step forward to save a young child who fell into the water at City Dock the weekend before last. Devontae Lemex was with his daughter when a child fell into Ego Alley. Without thinking, he dove in for the rescue, ruining his cell phone in the process. He's been featured on local TV news and in the Capitol. But I wanted to personally thank him. Is he out there or not? No? Okay. The mother took her child to Anne Arundel Medical Centre afterwards as a precaution, and everybody was fine, but it is a great story, so let's hear it for him. This Saturday at 6 a.m. in the morning, you might see a couple of hundred people intentionally jumping into the water off of Susan B. Campbell Park. It's all right. It's part of the Sailors Triathlon that is in coordination with the Naval Academy Athletics Association. It's a swim in Spa Creek, a bicycle ride over the Naval Academy Bridge, and a run through the Academy grounds and back to the Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium. The fire department has a team. My office has a team. I'll be swimming and cycling with my son. County Executive Stuart Pittman will be doing the bike portion. This is the second annual event. I encourage you all to sign up. There's still a few days for you to train. So it's only a half a mile swim. You'll all be fine. So. Ellie, you and Rob, you've got a team, right?
No, not this year. Not this year.
I haven't trained at all, so it's going to be sad. I'll give you a bike. Fred can run. Last Tuesday, we had the second of our Reimagining City Dock speakers, Dr. Tim Chapin, who talked about autonomous vehicles. What a great presentation as we head into our work on the 2020 Comprehensive Plan. He made us all think about how we might be getting around in another 30 or 40 years. He doesn't have a crystal ball, but he talked a lot about directions of investment among automakers and technology companies. They are putting their money towards a future that looks different, and he encouraged us to think about forward-looking investments in city infrastructure to meet those needs. If you didn't get a chance to hear that talk, you can see it on the city's YouTube page. It's definitely worth the time. On Friday, I attended the dedication of Mike Bush's pavilion at Whitmore Park. This is the first of what I'm sure will be many, sites honouring the late speaker. At the inaugural event under the pavilion, the Naptown Brass Band played. We were all dancing in the park on a Friday afternoon. I think he would have liked it. I look forward to attending concerts there and thinking about all Speaker Bush did for our city in advancing the arts and culture and, of course, recreation. It's a fitting tribute, so let's have a... And while that event wasn't connected to it, I want to mention the Four Rivers Heritage Trail and story map that was unveiled yesterday at Annapolis High School. There are 80 Annapolis sites included in this digital trail. You can visit the sites in person and call up the information about them on your smartphone. That is aacounty.org/African American Heritage. Within a few blocks of the Bush Pavilion in the old 4th Ward, there are 18 sites designated, including many African American businesses that were included in the Green Book, like the Washington Nightclub, the Star Theatre, the Wrights Hotel. All are gone now. Other places like the Stanton School, founded after the Civil War by the Freedmen's Bureau, is today a community centre. Please go onto the website and acquaint yourself with the rich history of our city. Thanks to Alderwoman Tierney, we came out in 100-degree heat on Saturday for Unity Day at Bloomsbury Square. Deputy Chief Romali came out with a hook and ladder truck and a squad of firemen. Acting Director Simmons and his crew were on site to talk emergency preparedness. Last week, I was very sad to have to attend a funeral. This one was for Elijah Wilson, a young man who was senselessly murdered just a few days shy of his 17th birthday. It was a moving ceremony, and I felt I needed to be there to support the family. I'm particularly saddened that it happened just a few days after we brought together experts and policymakers around the subject at our city's Safe Cities Gun Summit. Then we lost another young man to gun violence right here in our own backyard. I've said this before, but it's worth repeating over and over again. Until we get it right in this society, nothing, no thing ever is resolved or negotiated or changed in any way better when a gun is involved. Please lay down your weapons. Please treat others respectfully and with dignity. In an attempt to connect communities and make sure they are informed about some of the plans we have, Alderman Paone and I were invited to speak at Germantown and Homewood and Admiral Heights communities on July 11th. While there, I presented the extension of the Poplar Trail, which we are calling the WE, or the West East Express. The Poplar Trail is really a bright spot in the city's attempt to create safe and family-friendly pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. There were some in that community that were vehemently opposed to the Poplar Trail way back when, but now they see what a fantastic community amenity it is. Realtors even use it when talking about great reasons to buy a home in those communities. Allowing those neighbours to better understand how we want to extend the Poplar Trail and how BG&E is our partner in this enterprise, and they really got that. They even began to understand some of the key points in the public-private partnership for Spa Road and the land swap of DPW's relocation. We had a room full of converts by the end of the meeting. As a reminder, at the last City Council meeting, we passed a resolution to create a task force to look into the DPW relocation. That launch of that group and their first meetings will take place tomorrow at 2 p.m. at the Pip Moyer Rec Centre. Alderwoman Finlayson appointments will start their work. Thank you, Alderwoman Finlayson, for doing that for us. I look forward to the participation of city residents and subject matter experts. They expect to have reports to us by January or possibly sooner. I'd like to thank Jared Littman, who I'm sure we all miss here, for agreeing to chair that task force. You really twisted his arm on that one, Sheila. Good job. Later this week, Major League Lacrosse will be hosting their All-Star game in the city. This is the first one for that league, and we are thrilled they selected Annapolis to host. I took my family to a Bayhawks game last week, and it was exciting. I got to sound the siren. I also found out they have donated hundreds of tickets to charities in our city, including the Boys and Girls Club. Way to go. We need more community partners like them. I'm very pleased to announce to you 2 new hires who are here tonight. Lynn Farrow will become the Assistant City Manager. She has previously worked for the city as a grants manager from 2009 to 2012. Most recently, she was VP for Development and Public Policy for Goodwill Industries of the Chesapeake. Let's hear it for Lynn, if you'd like to stand up, Lynn. Next up is Stephen Rice. Stephen Rice will become Economic Development Manager under the Department of Planning and Zoning. Stephen was with his own theme music. I love it. I'm happy too. Stephen was Director of Community Development for the American Communities Trust, has deep experience in business development from his time at Howard County Economic Development Authority and the Greater Baltimore Urban League. At the Urban League, he ran a business program that focused primarily on women-owned, minority-owned, and local-based small businesses. He conducted workshops in financing, proposal writing, joint venturing, mentor-protege relationships. He has earned his undergraduate degree from Morehouse College, a graduate degree from Vanderbilt University and Harvard. Welcome to the team, Stephen. Stephen, just go up for a quick picture. Yep, we're finished. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
I've still got this one. No, that's it. Well,
My question
on we
is,
go, yes.
is there any point where we get to question, or, like, I mean, they're being hired by the city, I think the council should have an opportunity to just,
I'll get the city manager to talk to you.
So these positions are not positions in the city code that require council approval or
Yeah,
that
I
come
understand.
before the council for public questioning or anything.
But we definitely can get you together with them.
Yeah, we'd be happy to set something up, but the point was simply to introduce them.
transparency is what I was just pointing to, that's all.
Well, we'd have to decide a policy, how far down we're going to go on that, right? We got hundreds of employees.
Yeah, so there's 500 people in the city. So.
I understand that, but when you're talking about people who will literally be managing our city, making economic decisions on behalf of our city, I think that we should be able to question them and just get some sort of understanding of what direction they would like to take our city in. That's all.
Okay, cool.
We'll be happy to set something up, Alderman.
City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
The next item on the agenda is fund transfer from the city manager that's approved for $25,000 or less.
Thank you. We have one fund transfer within the Office of Emergency Management, $6,245 from contract services to telephone and supplies.
Thank you. Okay, next is reports by committees. Anybody have a report from their committee? Alderman Tierney?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Transportation Committee met July 11th, and we recommended 4 appointees to the soon-to-be reinvigorated Transportation Board. The next meeting is Thursday, September 12th at 6 p.m.
Alderwoman Pindell-Charles was next, sorry.
Yes, the next meeting of the Public Safety Committee will be held on Monday, September 16th at 6 p.m. here in council chambers.
Alderman Payon next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Audit Committee met this morning, and we discussed a myriad of issues. I will be giving my quarterly report to the council, I believe, on the second meeting in September. We're way overdue on giving it, but we're hoping to have the audit of the Recreation and Parks Department completed at that time, so we decided to put it back to the second meeting in September instead of the first. And I'll talk to your staff about getting that scheduled in on that agenda.
No problems.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Rules and City Government Committee met on July 9th. We addressed 2 pieces of legislation, Charter Amendment CA7, which deals with the city clerk, and O2319, which deals with the Office of Law. We gave a favorable recommendation for both. We also began to address O2619, which is the rental unit and short-term residential rental licenses. We have, I think, 1 amendment and many others to come. We'll continue deliberating on that legislation when we meet in September. Our next meeting will be held on Tuesday, September 10th, 4 o'clock here in council chambers. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Savage.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And first of all, I think my colleague here, new colleague from Ward 6, he's still not officially on any committees.
Yep.
I think we need to resolve that in time for September. So can we get, maybe I'll officially request this from the law office to get legislation to be introduced at our meeting on the 31st that would get him on the same committees that the former alderperson was on. I know you were going to look at some other assignments, but at least that'll get us ready for September to get rolling with some of the committee meetings.
Are you holding any meetings in the off period? Are you holding any meetings?
No, but if we get something introduced on the 31st, it'll be on first reader, so we can actually bring it up for a vote the first meeting in September, which will allow some of the committees to go forward. If we wait till September, we may not be able to have any committee meetings, or he may not be able to participate in the committee process until the second meeting in September. So I think we should, I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think it'd be important to get you involved and get the ball rolling on that.
No problem. Senator Shinika got you up to speed on some of those at all? Or,
Yeah, we've discussed.
Okay,
yeah.
cool. Right.
Sorry.
Thank you. Cool. Awesome.
But I do have a report. So at the last Environmental Matters Committee meeting, we did give a favorable recommendation for O2519, which was an adjustment to the Watershed Restoration Fund language. We had 1 amendment, which basically just added a annual report that gets delivered to the council, just so we have some more transparency and a summary of how that fund gets spent. We also had, so one of the things the committee's been working on is trying to identify and hear testimony from people regarding our restoration program in terms of the restoration of our waterways. And so we had a representative from a local nonprofit who's been doing the work, a local stream restoration company, but also 2 representatives from DNR. And, you know, essentially I think the testimony we got from DNR just kind of reinforced the point that their essentially summary was that Annapolis is still a very difficult jurisdiction to get stream restoration projects, ecological restoration projects approved. And so we're going to take that and we're going to continue the conversation and invite Public Works next month and any other staff and try to really, our goal is really just to try to improve the process. If we need to tweak the laws, if we need to work on implementation, what have you. But yeah, just wanted to make everybody aware of that effort from the committee. Our next meeting will be September 18th at 3 p.m.
Thank you.
Looks like my committee member
Yeah,
wanted
I
to-
just wanted to add that I think what we did establish from that meeting is that these watershed projects are a different type of project that needs a little bit different type of supervision and, for lack of a better word, hand-holding in a sense, so.
Yeah, we did identify a few solutions to look at. We also spoke with the county to compare their processes, because we really want to make sure that we don't lose out on the millions of dollars that DNR is giving to local jurisdictions around the state. And it was kind of clear their frustration with some of our processes, so.
Thank you. Virginia just wanted to speak a little to the committee still on.
Yeah, the standing committee assignment is already in the works. It will be on the agenda for the September 9th meeting.
Can we get that accelerated for the 31st?
No.
Or can we? all right.
The chief of staff is working on that. That's the duty of the mayor and the chief of staff. They're working on it.
We can take a look to see if we can accelerate it. Yeah,
Right, but I mean, if there's nothing to work on if we just put them on the same committees that Alderwoman Henson was on.
But I don't think any of the committees meet before the 9th of September.
Right, I know, but it's going to take 2 meetings, right? Or can we do this at 1 meeting?
It's
Get
going to
the
be a
committee assignments.
resolution. The rules can be suspended and it can be adopted the same night. So he could meet right the next day if he was assigned to that standing committee.
Okay.
We can do that, yeah. Alderman Annette?
It's never been done by resolution before that I know of. It's usually the mayor suggests the committees meet, they agree to the members be on the committee, and then they select a chair. So I don't know why we can't do it the same way. Just have the committees, usually the new person, and it happened when Sheila and I were here, just take the place of the people that were
Quickly,
making.
I'm sorry.
Because we were elected in a special election.
So no?
Okay, Alderman Gay. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm new to this. I'm fine with 2 of the 3 committees that she served on, so I don't want to completely just jump right into the 3 that she served on. I noticed a vacancy in the Transportation Committee.
Is there?
Okay, thank you. Which one don't you like? Which one don't you like?
That was the Audit Committee. I'd rather focus on the city's transportation issues.
Alderman
May I?
Finlayson, yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm unclear. The chief of staff is redoing the council committees for September?
The code states that the mayor selects the standing committees. He appoints the members and the council confirms them.
So I think the only thing that's up, would you like to?
Who are you pointing to? I'm sorry, could you repeat?
Oh,
There's not a vacancy on the transportation committee.
so,
I-
yeah. We're still working on it. Let's leave it
Yeah.
there, can we?
Yeah.
Thank you. The city attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
All right. Next item on the agenda is a presentation from SP Plus on waterfront parking meters.
Thank you, Mr. Kemp.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Mayor and the City Council. My name is Kwaku Dua, Deputy Director of Transportation Department. I'm here on behalf of Rick Gordon, who couldn't make it tonight. I have with me John Kemp and Kevin Wands, who will be presenting to you information on the waterfront parking meters. John?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm trying to get this. I don't think I actually have the right connection, unfortunately. I was going to present it on the screens. Give me one moment. But we have hard copies distributed in the event, in the interest of time. So why don't we go with those? Hold on, I think I may have gotten it. Okay. Okay, thank you for your patience there. I'll just start by reiterating, I'm John Kemp, I'm the regional manager for SP Plus. I lead the team here who manages your parking assets. Kevin Warrants, to my right, is our senior manager, really the person in charge of all things day-to-day in the city, whether that's on-street parking, off-street parking, the circulator, et cetera. We just have 4 items here on to discuss with respect to the proposed increase in meter rates at the waterfront parking spaces. First, we just wanted to remind everyone of the utilization study that we performed in 2017. We looked at occupancy rates at different periods of time on different days around the city, both at on-street parking spaces, whether they were metered or time limited, as they are in residential permit districts, as well as at off-street locations. The spaces being discussed here in this particular resolution, the data at that time confirms what most of us had concluded anecdotally and continue to, and that is extremely high occupancy, greater than 90%. Upwards close to 100% on Saturdays in these particular spaces, particularly at peak times. And coming out of that study were several recommendations. There's a large basket of items, and we continue to talk about both the results of the study, what we continue to observe, and the recommendations offered at that particular time. Yes, sir.
Just before you're going quickly here, going back to that chart you have, the lots that are being proposed to have their rates changed, I guess is number 4 here on the list?
That's one of them, yes.
Is one of them.
That's correct, that's one of them.
And so what's the utilization of those?
So at that time, so at City Dock Lot on, for example, in this particular example, and I'm happy to give you an expanded version of this data so that you can take that away. But the utilization at City Dock Lot was upwards of 90% on a Friday and a Saturday in September. When you combine both March observations in March, May, and September, occupancy was greater than 90% at peak. That would be Fridays, Saturdays, et cetera. And that's in line with occupancy rates at the adjacent spaces to the spaces being discussed here. Those would be spaces that are on residential streets in the surrounding area.
Sir,
it seems like we may have
Alderman
another question.
Finlayson wants to see.
Can you blow up the chart? So, I mean, there should be a law against anything in print that says
I apologize for that.
I'm just saying.
This is really just an image to help provoke the conversation. Please let me give you all of this. All this data, by the way, was presented. It's on the city's website. It's on our website. But I will send you all of this data again so you can see it.
But you can't just blow up that box right now so we can see it.
No, I don't think I'll be able to, unfortunately. I apologize for that.
That's okay.
But I can tell you with specificity that City Dock Lot, as an example, 92% on Fridays, occupancy of 92% on Fridays, 99% on Saturdays in this particular set of observations. Okay. So to continue, this bore several recommendations as a result of these very high occupancy rates. In parking, we target 85% parking or below as a barometer to demonstrate a healthy system, meaning there's turnover occurring. traffic's not being impeded, congestion's not building up, et cetera. And in the basket of recommendations, we went, again, I can forward the study on to everyone, but you'll see that the recommendations made in there go far beyond, far beyond increasing rates at a handful of spaces in the most highly utilized areas. Yes, sir.
Nanette?
Are you referring to this?
Correct.
June
That's it,
30th,
sir. Yep.
17th? Right.
Yep.
Okay, so, because there's nothing in here that is as specific as what's recommended in the...
That might be a version that did not print with, there's exhibits. This is I believe this comes right out of Exhibit B, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a
All
couple of
right.
years.
I don't have the exhibits. All right, thank you.
Yeah. I'll make sure you do.
Alderman Savage?
So you said the target for utilization is 85% or below?
Once you get to 85%, the generally accepted principle in parking is that you're entering an area of what might be considered an unhealthy system. Correct.
If it's over 80%?
Correct.
Okay, and so you're saying the average utilization for all of the Sector 1 lots is 90% at peak?
In these particular spaces
least
that
in
we're
this-
discussing for this rate increase, yes.
These percentages are only for one day. Do you have?
Well, they're from
Is that
3
starting?
days. They're from 3 different days at 3 different times of year. So they're from 9 days.
In September, yeah.
Yeah. Well, no. There's a Wednesday in September, March, and May. There's a Friday in September, March, and May, and there's a Saturday in September, March, and May. Very small print. Again, I'm sorry. A lot of data on a single page.
Okay. Oh,
So last week, we received a presentation from ULI, and they have several pages of parking recommendations also. Do you know how the ULI recommendations interleave with the recommendations in your study?
Not off the top of my head, but we have looked at the ULI study when it was released some time ago, and we did meet one time with them.
So, Mayor, the ULI are giving us their recommendation in October, I believe it is? All right, so my thinking is it would be good to make sure these proposals mesh with each other.
okay. Sure we could adjust that. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Kemp. Keep going.
Yep. So the next page was to look at the impact of revenue on this particular proposed increase. So there's a small range of options on that particular one. But if revenue were to increase, obviously at a rate to $4 an hour over the course of the entire year, there'd be a revenue increase over $700,000. Ranging down to if the rate were increased only during what we'll call peak season from April through October to $3 an hour, revenue increase would be a little above $266,000 as projected, or $250,000. Consumer alternatives, so some impacts to the potential user groups, because some of these questions came up in our discussions. We meet, let me just back up real quick, we meet every other week with members of City Council, Alderwoman Tierney, Department of Transportation, representatives from the Mayor's Office, et cetera. One of the questions that has come up over the course of reviewing this was impact to residents, for example. There's really no impact to residents. Residents get free parking for up to 2 hours in off-street locations owned by the city. So whether it's $2 today or $4 tomorrow,
Just going to finish the presentation.
the fee to residents who choose to park off-street and use validations is zero. And then there is a park and shop program in place, very inexpensive when you compare to alternatives out there in different municipalities. So for 55 cents, a business downtown can purchase a coupon that gives whomever they wish to hand that coupon to, free parking for up to an hour. And up to 4 of those can be used. So for somebody visiting town and choosing to park in a garage and patronizing locations that participate in the Park and Shop program, they can get a coupon, stay for 4 hours, and pay nothing. So last one. Given the extremely high utilization, we feel there's really a negligible impact on peak demand, even at the higher proposed rate of $4 per hour versus $3. The increased revenue, of course, would certainly support further initiatives. And it's just a step, as I mentioned, in our conclusions. In our 2017 study, many of our recommendations go far beyond this, but we certainly see this as a step toward a more performance-based system, where pricing's reflective of demand, and in order to help drive some of the healthier tendencies we'd like to see out of the parking system.
So
that's
Alderman Edwards first.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So I guess there's several questions. The legislation has 3 target areas. I assume you're familiar with these.
Yes, sir.
It's hard to know what the policy objective of this legislation is, but it's clear that one of the objectives is to raise revenue. And my question is, if the objective is to raise revenue for other initiatives, which we really do need to have more clearly specified, why aren't we doing this for all surface parking? And maybe not such an egregious increase in fees if we do it across the city. So I guess my question is, first question, why are we focusing on this area, which, as you must be aware, is a particularly hot button area right now with the ULI plan and all of the potential changes that are going on city docks. So if the goal is to generate revenue, why don't we spread it out and spread it across the city with a lower increase? Another question is, why don't we extend the period of time when we charge metered parking? I think it stops at 7 now. Why don't we extend it to 10? Again, if the goal is for revenue, and if it's not for revenue, and as you stay here, it's that this increase has minimum impact on the peak, which I can tell you my constituents are not seeing this as minimum impact. A lot of them are saying they find the convenience of coming down and parking there, and they will be paying these increased rates, and they're not particularly interested in doing that. But I'm trying to get to the underlying policy, and that's why it's important also to link this study to the ULI study. We've got a lot of moving parts here, and it feels like we've all of a sudden, just in the last couple of weeks, had this initiative dropped on us, the council, at the last council meeting, and we haven't had much chance to have some discussion about underlying policy and alternative approaches that we could be thinking about, again, particularly if the objective is to generate more income, more revenue. It does seem to me there could be a lot of other things, other information you could give us, like, say, a 25-cent per hour increase on all surface parking, or maybe a 20-cent or 10-cent increase for all parking, whether it's surface parking or structured parking. We're not being given any alternatives to consider with this legislation. I'm not opposed to doing this, and in fact, I like the idea of dynamic pricing. As an economist, that makes a lot of sense to me, but I just don't think we're given a whole array of things to think about. Maybe others have been given that, but I don't think, and I've had lots of discussions with my colleagues on the council, I don't think we as a body, a policymaking body, have been given the ability to think about a range of alternatives.
Was there
Would you
a question in
accept-
there?
Would you accept that there are other alternatives?
Oh, certainly. Like, I mean, you're holding our study, which provides a laundry list of alternatives, including
Right.
extending meter hours.
Right, and that's why this
Oh, there's, of
specific-
course, there's
specific
any number of ways you could approach this. I can't speak to, obviously, we don't generate legislation. So I'm here to share the information as much as I can as it pertains to this particular.
Thank you. Do you have any figures for extending the meters till, say, midnight on, well, I would say
Yeah.
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights?
We do. It's in our study, and we can refresh those based on, updated. We have transactional data that's much more recent. The study was in 2017. We're now in 2019, so we can certainly apply some new data to those same calculations. And absolutely.
I'd say the same thing, although I don't think there's, I don't know if extending the meters till 9 o'clock during the week would really have a terribly dramatic effect from what I can tell. Most of the year downtown, some of the year, yes, but hey, there are times when, Main Street looks like it closes everything down at 6 or 7 o'clock.
Yep.
Not in the summer, but other times, so I understand that, but I think it's really important to find out about the weekend times, extending it till midnight or later. And I also think that Alderman Arnett brought up a good point that there are other parts of town, if not the entire town, where a small increase would, in my mind, beat the heck out of a large increase in a relatively small area. Thank you for coming in, by the way.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you mentioned how, I get the revenue increase part, but what kind of initiatives do you have in mind?
Well, I don't assume that any of these, that these funds would be earmarked for us, but certainly there's just in our world, parking. You've got a whole city to run, but just in the parking side of things, I mean, we're embarking on replacing old single-space meters that are in disrepair. The single-space meters that you see on Main Street, Maryland Avenue. Whereas on City Dock Lot, Donner Lot, Basil Lot, we've got multi-space meters which we installed when we first arrived. We'll be starting with a small replacement of some of those single-space meters. That would be one example of a project that we foresee is continuing into the future.
Okay.
That's probably the closest one at the top of my mind.
Mm-hmm. And and what's the rationale for only doing this I'll wait till legislation comes up to ask what the rationale is to only do this in the City Dock area.
Well, I would just offer on that particular one. I mean, that came up, and I would just offer it was, from my perspective, what I gathered was that, again, this is a step. There is, as Alderman Arnett alluded to, there are many different options out there, which we've recommended, many of which we've recommended up to this point. But I sense this might be a step in, that, could get more momentum to that end.
And so does this sector have some of the highest utilization?
Absolutely, yeah.
It does.
Really everything east of Church Circle is
and you were saying that
in that peak area.
The target's 85% or less for utilization. Do you feel like this increasing the fees would help to reduce the utilization?
To some degree. I mean, I think the demand is actually beyond, those. You could only park in 100% of the spaces, but I'm certain, given what we see with respect to congestion, vehicle circling, demand is probably higher than that. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if $4 even would. I feel like certainly some congestion would.
So you're saying a reduced utilization.
But will it be to 85%? Hard to say.
Yeah.
During peak times, it's
But you're
I mean,
saying reduced.
it's a very desired place to be when the weather's nice and something
Sure,
fun is
yeah.
going on, regardless of the price.
So a reduced utilization, you're saying, would help to improve traffic flow?
Yeah, exactly.
in
So
theory,
lower,
anyway?
I don't think it'll become, this is I'm really speaking off the cuff here, but I don't think it'll become any less desirable to come downtown and do the great things that there are to do downtown at any time of year. But habits will begin to change where some folks will choose to park in underutilized spaces a bit further to the west as you look at Gott's Garage and streets as you go further to the west, and they'll choose to either walk or rent a bike or jump on the circulator and make their way down to City Dock.
I mean, I just want to just a few more things. Since you're here, I think it'd be a benefit, especially if this ends up passing, to make it easier for residents to get the passes, the 2-hour free passes. I mean, I've heard maybe this isn't accurate, but I've heard some complaints about that they have to come down during working hours. I know you used to be able to get those at the parking garages. I don't know if you still can.
We absolutely still can. We have, it may be been a coincidence where that particular garage ran out whenever,
So you can still go
we try to accommodate as much as, we try to keep an appropriate amount of stock of those.
Okay. Last question has to do with annual reporting. Do you submit any annual reports on overall utilization of our lots to the city?
No, I mean, it's hard
Or to the
to,
department?
we don't, we submit data on an ongoing basis, and we stand ready to provide all kinds of data to whomever really wants to take a look at it. As far as utilization goes, we can gather quite a bit more data from, for the most part, we can get fairly accurate data, but bear in mind that when we're not actually physically observing, what we're talking about in that case is transactional occupancy. Of course, as we know, some folks might have overstayed or might not be paying, and so, those numbers between transactional occupancy versus real occupancy can vary a little bit.
Okay, because I think if this passes, I think it'd be important to be able to look at the data to say,
Of
well,
course.
if utilization dropped significantly or there was some other impact that we would need to reassess. But thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Alderman Finlayson, then Alderman Gay after that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. How much money are we trying to generate? And that seemed like
I don't know.
the first question we need to answer. Do you have any idea what we're trying to raise here?
No.
No.
I can address the money issue.
Okay.
So, going back to the Panalides administration and the last time the city sold bonds in 2017, is that when we sold bonds last, Jody? I think we sold them in 17.
2016.
Okay. The rating agencies did their evaluation, and the administration promised that we would try to repay the deficit amount owed from the parking fund and the transportation fund to the general fund. They put no timeline on the transportation fund at all, and said that they would try to repay the parking fund, from parking fund to general fund, in 7 years. So at the end of 2018, the parking fund still owed the general fund $4.1 million. And so while the parking fund does generate on its face a profit, we're taking that profit and giving it to the transportation fund. When we transfer more than, $2.4, $2.5, $2.7 million over to transportation. By sending it over to transportation, we're not using that money to pay back what it owes the general fund. So to the extent that we can increase revenues, those revenues can be used to repay the general fund the amount it owes, to start a limit, which starts reducing the deficit in the parking fund. Or it can be used, if you so choose, you can appropriate it, for example, for equipment improvements, like the project you have to fix the gates at the garage, or replace the gates at the garages. When you do that, and the gates work more often, or the gates work, you don't have to leave them open and let people park for free because the gate doesn't work and you gotta let them out. Or you can do, for example, you put $25,000 in the budget this year for multi-space meters. Multi-space meters generate more revenue than single-space meters. And then you can take the single-space meters that we have and use them to replace the broken single-space meters that we have, and all of those things generate more revenue. The more revenue we have, the more that we can repay this amount owed to the general fund, which city government, before this administration, pledged to do within 7 years. And we're making progress.
We are making progress.
Between 2017 and 2018, that payable from the parking fund to the transportation fund went down by $1 million. So we're getting there, but
Okay.
it needs to go down by $1 million a year if we're gonna get there.
Okay.
Or close to it.
You mentioned two different revenue generators, the gates, if they're repaired, new meters. My next question is going to be, did we look at other options? For example, and Alderman Payon mentioned changing the times on the meters. Now we cut our meters off at 7 o'clock. So what if we don't cut them off until 8 o'clock? How much money will that generate us? Suppose we go to 9 o'clock.
Sure.
Suppose we go to 10 o'clock. I would never want to go to midnight, but, you know. But anyway, we need to see options, and I'm not seeing options. We're giving one choice, that's to double the rates, which I personally think is excessive. So tell us what other things we can do to begin to chip away. And I'm not asking you to give us all the answers right now, because I don't think we're ready to make this decision. I think you guys can help us by telling us what the options are and how much we can generate by taking these different options. Because I thought I heard some reticence in your voice when we were talking about the recommendation. Is this your recommendation that we double?
Well, we don't propose legislation.
Well, yeah, but you can recommend.
And we absolutely support it from a standpoint of we don't see the downside from a perspective of either making those spaces undesirable, meaning reducing demand, and nor do we see an effect on residents who, again, have free parking at off-street locations. And for those businesses who choose to participate in a inexpensive park and shop program, their customers can park for free as well.
How many businesses are part of that program now?
We do have that number.
About 15.
15 out of how many businesses?
A lot.
I don't know.
A lot. So not many are taking advantage of it. Do we advertise it?
We do.
We do. We're in a campaign now where we're actually putting it out there so that other businesses can see it, and it's very public.
Okay. My last question, and maybe it's not my last question, was going to be about the impact on businesses. You know, we're in a society now, we want to park exactly where we're going, and preferably right in front of where we want to go.
Mhm.
So how is this going to impact the businesses downtown?
Well, if you're one of the lucky few who are among that 99% of occupants already in the space, you're okay. But if you're not going to get the space in front of the business as it is, free or at $4 or at $5.
Okay, and so potentially we could be driving business out of our city,
Oh, I don't know.
or not business necessarily, but customers to
No.
some place like the town center where they can park in a close garage and walk a half a block.
Well,
I know you don't
no,
wanna
I
deal
mean,
with
like I said, the utilization's at 90+% now. I mean,
Yeah.
people are, at peak times, there's not enough spaces for the cars as it is,
Okay,
right in front of the business. There's plenty of spaces in the system, plenty of spaces in the system. Not enough spaces directly in front of the
Right.
business on city dock.
so,
There's one or two of those, right?
And the premise behind the whole park and shop program is to give the consumer free parking. They can get up to 4 hours of free parking if the business chooses to join. And it costs the business 55 cents per hour or per ticket, which reduces the price or your time by 1 hour. So by getting more businesses on, we're offsetting that as well, the cost to the actual consumer.
and it's 55 cents an hour?
It's 55 cents per coupon. It depends on where you are in the garage or which garage you park in, but it will give you up to 4 hours off.
Okay, so each coupon is good for?
1 hour.
1 hour.
1 hour. So it's 55 cents an hour. Okay. And advertising, you said you're in an advertising campaign now for the businesses. Is there a campaign to advertise to the parkers where they should go if they don't park right downtown? What tells them they should go out to Park Place because we have 1,000 spaces out there.
The website, our website lists all of the parking locations in the city that are not only controlled by or owned by the city of Annapolis. We also partner with other businesses and other garages to put it out there for everybody. So you have a choice.
So if tourists are coming to town, they can go to the city
They should go to
website,
it.
and it'll tell them where they can park all
They
over
should
the
go to
city.
AnnapolisParking.com. Every space in town is communicated through our site, whether it's owned by you or others.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Alderman Gay.
Just quick comments. As noted several times tonight, residents have the option of using the yellow or blue 2-hour pass. That basically gives you free parking, or it reduces the price tremendously. I use them all the time. As stated, you can pick them up at the garages. Secondly, so the comprehensive plan in 2009, so this is now a 10-year-old document, and we'll be producing another one in the next year, correct? But the comprehensive plan in 2009, I just went back and read this. Parking throughout the city will be priced and the supply managed to reduce demand for automobile travel during peak congestion periods and to help fund transit, biking, walking, and ferry services. This means for achieving this includes parking should be priced according to demand. Spaces in highest demand should be priced at the highest rate. Utilizing technological solutions to manage parking, real-time parking information at key gateways to downtown, a pay and display system to increase parking capacity and allow pricing to be set in response to demand and technology that supports parking enforcement. So all the Alderwoman from Ward 1 is doing is simply following the comprehensive plan that was, created 10 years ago. So I'm not really sure what the issue is, and us following that. And secondly, all we've talked about as council and as independent citizens is removing cars from the downtown area. So if this is a way to do so, I'm not sure why we are, not really all on board with this. I guess that may be just more of a general question for my colleagues. But I just wanted to point out that what she's doing was recommended 10 years ago.
Thank you. Alderman Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep it brief, but I just wanted to address some of my colleagues' questions that SP Plus, as our parking management company, is probably not able to address. Just keep in mind, they do work for the city, and they are experts in what they do, and that is why they're here to explain, number one, why these particular spots. That was one question. Why these particular spots? What John Kemp explained in the beginning, probably better than I could, is the high demand that is 90% right now. And that, as he said, raising the price will not seem to impact that. And I think one thing he didn't address was what we have is a situation now where actually on the weekends people are waiting to park. And then this will address the transient parking issue. He's nodding his head.
Correct, yes.
So
We
that was
agree.
one question. The other one is why now? Why now? And this fee increase was, my intention was for it to be concurrent with the budget review. As we all know, anytime we asked to add money, our directive from our city manager was find me the revenue. And I know that I barely got in the $25,000 in the 11th hour to get the walk-up meters, so I knew that was my signal that we had to find what was the problem here. And then, of course, what's balanced there, as the city manager said, is our need to pay off a debt. So, it's like paying off your home, but yet you have repair work and maintenance and all that you still have to pay for. And then the third question that they couldn't address is the ULI. And I tried to say this at the work session, and Robert Clark and I have talked about this. The ULI, right now there are a lot of moving parts for the ULI to base their decision. When will Hillman be rebuilt? What will be left at City Dock? These spaces that we're addressing may not even be there. And so any big overall plan to do now is irrelevant, basically, because come October, when they present their plan, It will have very severe suggestions. It will have suggestions that are most likely in the utilization study as extension of all the meters and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I bet at that time, we will have lots of questions, lots of discussions with our residents. So this one had the least impact with the ULI working group, but at the same time addressing the revenue shortage that we immediately have. So I think those were the three questions that that needed clarification.
Thank you. Alderman Annette, next. Then
Mr.
Alderman
Mayor,
Leon.
I'm glad you mentioned the parking map because one of my businesses noted that it doesn't show parking in Eastport. I actually called one of your staff people and pointed out that there's parking like at the Annapolis City Marina and other places in Eastport, and it would be very helpful for that business in Eastport. I would imagine, Alderman Payon, it would be helpful if the map showed parking facilities in West Annapolis and throughout the city. And I don't know whether that's in your mandate or in the amount of money we're paying you, but the map doesn't seem to really show parking resources other than just downtown. So it would be nice if we would address
Sure,
that.
we reached out to, we'll reach back out to the city marina spaces there. We did at the time that the site was being put together, and they did not want the information on there, but we'll reach back out to them again.
Yeah, I know they didn't, but they should have.
Okay.
And they didn't really have a choice because that's in the agreement. But that's not the only parking. There's other parking throughout the city. I just brought it up because you happened to mention it, but that old adage, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, we have to think about a lot more than just parking. We have to think about the impact on businesses. We have to think about the impact on employees who are working for those businesses. We have to think on the impact of the residents that live in our neighborhood. So I think Alderwoman Finlayson is exactly correct. I think we need to understand more options. Alderman Gay is correct in what's in the comprehensive plan, but this isn't really real-time dynamic parking. This is A or B. What we really want are meters that really do allow us to address this dynamically. And I had the inkling, although it's never been spelled out, that one of the initiatives might be that we would be upgrading our equipment, and I think that's a good thing to do. I still question why, though, we want to plunk all of the burden of wiping out the debt and addressing all of this on this little tiny area. It's not the only area in the city for parking, and it's not the only area that we can use, and I think that it is an area, if we expanded broader, we could soften the blow of such a big increase. I don't see in the legislation, and I only heard tonight, the fact that we're going to be using increased parking fees to pay down the $4 million debt or annual deficit, whatever it is. But if that's what we want to do, I think we should be raising it to $400 an hour, not $4 an hour, because that's a huge bill. So, I think we got to figure out, we need to have time to figure out all of the things that we're trying to accomplish and how we can best do that while we keep our citizens on a low simmer instead of a raging boil about this, because the email traffic has even exceeded short-term rentals on this rate increase. So it's not going unnoticed. Thank you.
Alderman Payon's next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't understand, and Mr. Kemp and Lawrence, this doesn't have anything directly to do with you, but I can't understand why we would change the parking situation down around the city dock, and that's what we're talking about mostly here, now with the understanding that within less than 6 months, when the ULI report comes out and the results of that, we may very well be called upon to change it completely again.
Not to mention the old garage going away.
Well, and on top of that, I agree with you, you and Alderwoman Finlayson, that we need a little more information if we can accomplish the same thing by making the meters a little longer. I doubt that adding 2 hours on weekends, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night would, I kind of doubt that you'd raise exactly the same amount of money as you would by doubling the cost of the meters now, but I think you could raise a substantial amount of money. The fact of the matter is, we don't really know that, and those are figures that I for one would like to have. I think I don't feel completely comfortable voting on this tonight. I've got to say that if I do, I don't think the sponsors of the legislation would be very happy with the vote they would get from me, but I'm certainly not against raising money for the parking fund, and I'm maybe not against raising the parking somewhat, but I just want to make sure that that's our last alternative. Our taxpayers pay plenty to the city right now, and the only place I see this driving local residents to is right on up Main Street and out of town to some other place to go shopping, and that's not what any of us really want to see. Thank you.
Alderman Gay had his hand up next. Now, we are only talking about 10% of the parking, and this is an experiment. So, as you can see, we haven't done anything for 10 years. So,
I think that's...
And it is in the docket tonight, so we have time for it. There's a lot of people here ready to speak tonight. So we have time to talk about this when it's on the docket as well.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. I think that was just the point that I was getting at, is that, again, this was something that was recommended 10 years ago. So I'm not sure, I understand the ULI report comes out in October. So could the legislation possibly be tweaked, that we run this trial through October and go with the recommendations of the ULI report? I'm just afraid that putting it off will put it off another 10 years, and the deficit will be at, what, 8 million? You said it was at 4 million right now or something like that. So I'm really confused on when do we plan to address the issue of a deficit, if not now.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up, I think, because we do have it on the docket later, and a lot of people come to speak tonight. So
Mr.
thank
Mayor,
you.
can I
Yeah.
just make one comment
Sure.
to Alderman Arnett's comment about using these fees, putting the burden of eliminating the deficit on these fees? That's not what this does. I mean, certainly any increase in revenue helps, any decrease in costs helps, but I'll remind you, Alderman Arnett, that in the budget, we increased parking fines substantially to go into the parking fund, and the revenue budgeted in the parking fund is $739,000 more than the expenses, for the explicit purpose of reducing that deficit. And that was all presented to the Finance Committee and the Council during budget. So we are proactively trying to reduce that deficit. This is not something, a standalone thing intended to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Alderman Arnett.
I'd like to respond, though. Well, first of all, apparently we didn't handle it comprehensively in the budget because we're back here immediately seeking for more money. But this is the context that this is being raised, is to raise money for a number of things, apparently. One is new initiatives, great, but one of them is to run down this $4 million deficit. So it is talking about doing that, or are we not? So then the question goes back to how much money do we need to raise, and what do we need to raise it for? And that's, I'm not saying that we're doing something wrong. I'm just saying I don't know what we're doing, and I feel a need to know more about it, and I feel I very definitely need to have enough information to explain this move to my constituents. I would assume other aldermen have the same kind of worry.
Okay, Ms. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Next item on the agenda is comments by the general public. During comments by the public may speak on any item that's not scheduled for public hearing tonight. The only piece of legislation scheduled for public hearing is R3519, Major City Dock Event and Itinerant Merchant Sales in the Historic District.
Okay, thank
Mr.
you all
Mayor.
for coming.
Quick question about
Alderman
that.
Seppert,
Just a quick question about that. How many people are on the list to testify? Is it a lot?
A page and a half.
It's not too much. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, two different pieces, is it? Ooh, that's good.
Okay.
Great. Okay, so first person signed up to speak is Nushi Carrera.
Okay, you can hear me. And the alderman. I actually am speaking about O2619, so I'm not sure if that's relevant this evening.
Yes, go
Okay,
ahead.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you. My husband and I moved here from Montgomery County 12 years ago, and we bought a house in Eastport, and then we lived there, and we bought another house built from ground up just around the corner, again in Eastport. So the original property is a long-term rental, and we finished our basement 3-4 years after we moved into our new house, and we have been doing short-term rentals on that basement, and 85% of our guests are Naval Academy parents. I am a mom of a Naval Academy grad, class of 2010, and son-in-law as well. And honestly, I have connection to about 6,000 families in the Naval Academy, all US-wide as well as some of them internationally, and they never have enough lodging available to them between hotels and bed and breakfast. So we personally don't think we're taking business away from anybody. If anything, we are making our homes more beautiful, more attractive within our neighborhoods, because we need to please and appease these guests so they can come back. And it is actually between our long-term rental since 2011 and the short-term rental, we are having a better experience, and I believe our property would be actually worth more when we do get ready to sell it, as well as we will not have capital gains tax. We've paid our income tax to the federal and state ever since we've been doing this, so I'm for lodging taxes. Please help us understand how we collect it and when we send it, so that would be nice if there is some guidance on the website about that. Specifically if it's anything that city likes to collect. How much, what percentage, and where do we mail our checks? So basically my 2 points is 120 days that you're trying to limit the number of evenings or days that can be rented. I think that's unreasonable. Between just Naval Academy events, we have over 4 different major events that parents are involved. Commissioning week, it's another event. And then we have 6 home football games. And just like you were saying, the lacrosse, we have the boat show. So I just think that is one limit that is just not going to be practical for homeowners. And bottom line is, if this source of income becomes very difficult for residents who are homeowners here, it would actually have a negative impact on the city businesses. We all turn around and spend a lot of money here. 99% of our guests are going to restaurants. They're not cooking in our apartment. They're not, coffee is pretty much all they do. So I know that we are contributing significantly to the welfare of the business in town. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me? Nushi? Alderman Arnett has a question? Yes. Quick one.
Yes, quick question. So the 120-day limit is something that we're grappling with now. We've asked the Realtor Association to help us with that, but any input you have on that? We're trying to strike a balance between these are businesses that are going on in residential neighborhoods. On the other hand, these are businesses we recognize provide a service. I use them myself, so I know what it is, but we need some help with with the numbers, what would make more sense, so. if you have a
I know, yeah, for example, we have rented 2-3 months in the summertime to the freshly minted officers at the Naval Academy. So right there, you know, you could be utilizing 60 to 90 days. And then when you have legislation in session, that could be another 90 days. So right there, you're knocking out 180 days for what I call the rhythm of the city. Those are the things that happens all the time. So if you ask me, is it 365? I'll say no, because I know personally we've been doing this since 2015. We have never rented it probably more than 150 days. But maybe if there is a survey that's been given to the short-term rental homeowners, that would provide you some data that you can work with. Sure.
Thank you. Alderman Gay has a question too.
So that was a concern of mine when reading the legislation as well, that the minimum was capped at 120 days when you, in fact, do have the General Assembly in session for 90 days. If you were to rent for the entire 90 days, you'd be able to rent 30 days. So I think that you raise a valid point, and it's something that should be looked into.
Yes, I appreciate that. Any other questions?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Marie Pohide.
Good evening. I wish to comment on the short-term rentals.
Just state your name and address for the record,
excuse me.
please.
Marie Pohida, 411 Monterey Avenue in Annapolis, Maryland.
Thank you.
Okay, I moved from Frederick County, and I renovated with my husband a home in West Annapolis, and we thought we needed a place to live for 2 weeks, but it turned into 6 months, so we could, oversee the construction. We rented a condo in West Annapolis, and it was absolutely wonderful. I could walk the dog, I could make meals, I could meet the new neighbors in the neighborhood, and daily check out what was going on with the house. I could do that while continuing to work at my government job with my husband. I can't even imagine how disruptive it would be to have to move out in 90 days or 120 days. We really needed that full 6 months. But anyway, that's it. Thank you for listening to my comments.
Thank you. Next up, Robert Eads.
Good evening, Aldermen, Alderwomen, Mayor. This evening, I'm just going to be asking questions. I had 3 different people come to me representing 3 different alderpersons up there saying that when I come down here, that I talk and I get the attention of the audience and everybody, but then soon as I start to mention individuals' names, I lose people. Well, if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you can go. If you don't know who you are, you don't know what you can be. So my point is, when I start talking about people that's coming into the black community and raping the black community, and if I sit back and don't say anything and watch it happen again, and some of you alderpersons were here when it first came and I brought it to you years ago, y'all didn't listen, and then you saw it happen, you say you won't let it happen again. Well, I'm sitting back and I'm watching, and I see it happening again. I refuse just to say that because people support me, which I hear and get the claps, but I never see any action, to sit back and not speak about it. How many people in here raised their hand, had to tell your little child at 4 years old, if you hear pop, dive to the floor? How many people in here, little girl at 8 years old, tell them, I don't like 4th of July unless we go downtown because I got to keep going to the floor every time I hear pop? How many people in here have a young man that's 16 years old? Elijah was one of my members of my Boys and Girls Club. He's the 3rd one that I've lost to the streets because developers come into our community, develop homes, houses, but nothing else, no playground, a basketball. Every little black kid don't want a basketball. It's good to be able to compete and do that, yes, but to come into our communities and don't do anything. How many of y'all communities are people getting killed in. It's happening in mine. Across the city of Annapolis, it's happening in the black community, and I refuse to sell out, and I refuse to sit down and not speak about it. But what I expect from the city hall is that y'all work as a team, not individual wards. Y'all work as a team and handle each ward's issues so that we all can live peacefully. I refuse to let my little 8-year-old girl grow up with the idea that she has to be stuck. She doesn't have an opportunity. You know, one person said, they say that you're talking about race. You're always bringing up race, and I do. But what y'all don't understand is the race that I'm talking about is I want my little girl to be able to run the race to get up out of this neighborhood and not be held back by the other people that's running the race to stay ahead of her. That's the race I'm talking about. And those people that win that race, then once they win, they say they're conservatives. You know what a conservative is? That means, you know what the word conservative? Keep what you got. Conserve what you got. Don't let nobody else get it. I'm speaking about all I want to do is make it good for the little children in my neighborhood to have something to do. You know why little Elijah was outside and got shot? Because he got nothing else to do. The boy is an artist. You should see his work. But he had nowhere to go other than out on the street where he was at to get get some air, and got killed for stuff. He wasn't into the street life. He wasn't into no hustling. He wasn't a thug. He was a good young man. And a couple others that I lost. And I'm going to keep on arguing about we got to make our communities better. I'm not going to stop. Not going to stop. And also, transportation department. Is not the revenue that the taxi cab drivers bring, is that not counted? Is that not counted? Why aren't we included in these studies? You had the atomic vehicles. Why aren't we included? People like me, that's my livelihood. A cab driver is all I'm gonna be. But it allows my little girl right now to be there on Hershey Park for 5 days because I bust my butt to do that for her. But when you talk about bringing in atomic cars, parking space, actually, my friend, if y'all want to make $4, I think y'all should make those meters $5 an hour. I really do. But I think you should include the taxi cab industry, the guys who are going to drive, not the computer-driven cars. That's coming in the future. Let's talk about the present. We need those spots. I'm going to sit down. But Mr. Mayor, you know, I've been asking you since you've been in. We got 250 licensed cabs with 4 parking spots in the whole city. 4. After 3 o'clock, the loading zones where the restaurants and the bars get their stuff, why can't they be converted into cab stands? I submitted issues of what Eugene, Oregon, I submitted it to your office, how they ran Uber and Lyft out. We need an option. We need an option. And I'm going to keep fighting. I'm not going to shut up, and I don't care whoever until somebody start helping us get in this race. The black community in the city of Annapolis is not in this race. We're being left behind, and things are put in place to keep us behind. I'm not going to shut up. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Next up is Tom Rikus.
Nobody got anything to say. That's what I'm talking about.
Robert, we have a meeting coming up. I think Hillary is setting up that taxi cab meeting.
I thought it just having meetings. I want stuff done. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, for being disrespectful, but we keep meeting, we have meetings, and we come back and I fuss again.
Thank you, Tom.
I'm sorry, sir. That's all right, man.
Good evening, Mayor Buckley, City Council members, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Tom Rikus. I live at 163 Prince George Street, right in here in downtown Annapolis. I think by now you know if parking's on the agenda, I'm going to be here to speak. So tonight I am here to speak in favor of R 3319. Now, whether you deliberate on it and pass it tonight remains to be seen, but you've heard from the parking management team, you've assembled the fiscal impact statement. And I know you have a lot of lingering concerns over what the impact might be to like users and businesses and residents. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of conversation tonight that'll deal with that. But I'm here, you know, as a resident, as somebody who's been following the parking issue closely for quite some time now. And I'm going to just opine that the impact that this resolution would have on users and residents and businesses is going to be zero or close to it. And that's because changes that the council made to the residential parking program, those changes that took effect earlier this month, have actually increased the inventory of short-term transient parking spaces close, those in those residential districts nearest to downtown. And I wish SP Plus, you know, I wish I'd had the opportunity to run this by them before. But pursuant to a Maryland Public Information Access request, SP Plus has provided me a tremendous amount of residential parking data from the period of July 1st, 2018 through April 15th of this year, 2019. I'm in the process of crunching all of that data and analyzing it, but this evening I can give you one really interesting example of a positive impact that the change to the residential parking program has had on downtown parking. So here's that example, and it comes from the data that I got from SP Plus and that, you know, I'll share with all of you. Okay, so between July 1st, 2018 and April 12th, 2019, and this has nothing to do with short-term rentals, the owner of a rental property advertised as just steps from Main Street and a block from City Dock. That owner of the property, in that period of time, obtained 45 multi-day temporary residential parking permits for weekend parking for 2 vehicles. Now that represented 177 days of long-term on-street parking. Okay. Now today, as a result of this holistic strategy that I'm hoping you're also thinking about when it comes to parking writ large, because of the whole holistic strategy to move long-term visitors from on-street parking to other options, and that strategy enabled in part by the changes to the residential parking program, that same property listing today states that guest passes for residential street parking can no longer be provided. And the listing goes on to lay out the variety of parking options at area garages and directs the users to the Annapolis Parking website for further details. And I'm seeing where other owners of similar type properties are directing or putting in their listings the same type of information. So now let me go down in the weeds for just a moment, and I bear your indulgence on this. So this time last year, and I'm focused on that one property, this time last year, 2 multi-day passes covering 2 cars for 3 days were issued to this owner. Now let's presume that this property was rented out this past weekend. Now, all things being equal, without those same 2 cars parked on the street for 3 continuous days, there was a greater chance that a transient visitor could find a free parking spot, again, using the words from the listing, just steps from Main Street and a block from City Dock. And this was confirmed this past weekend, when I watched a parking spot on my own street, right there, 163 Prince George Street, I watched a parking spot turn over at least 5 or 6 times. And I have no doubt that that's a direct result of getting long-term visitors using the other parking options. So looking at the data, I think that the increased number of free parking spots close to these seasonally priced meters won't have any impact on a user or a business. So when the time comes, I hope that you consider it favorably, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Next up is Carol Kelly.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Carol Kelly. I am no longer a resident of the province of Annapolis. I have moved into its larger sphere at Annapolis Town Center. In the spirit of enthusiasm I have for my reappointment tonight to the Citizens Annapolis Transportation Board, I would like to comment briefly in anticipation of the discussion, which has already occurred in part, among the council members that may cause this evening, that may ensue this evening I'm in, regarding 3 agenda items, R2719, Eastport and Forest Drive Communities and Governmental Agency Task Force, and R3319, Parking Meters-Fees, which are on the legislative action section of the agenda, and R3919, Payment in lieu of property taxes, Town Courts LLC, which has been added to the legislative action section. The task force creation represents a community reaction and subsequent governmental response to the already considerable and costly attention given, including public forums, to the Forest Drive Eastport sector study. The vote on parking meters fees, which did not have the benefit of consideration by the previously disintegrating Transportation Board, but received abundant media coverage, will be now considered here with primarily professional input from parking experts and support from the chair of the Council Transportation Committee. I'd like to diverge from my written notes a little bit to say that in regard to the discussion that has already occurred about parking, I can confirm as a previous member of the Transportation Board that there was at that level of community engagement full understanding, awareness, and even mathematical and data consciousness of the subtlety of the debt that has appeared on the table this evening regarding transportation funds. If that's relevant, you'll see to the rest of my argument. In contrast to the possible furtherance and implementation of these 2 public policies, the payment in lieu of property taxes for the construction of low-income housing is, I think, without much research on my part, newly introduced here to the public, not as a matter of relevance to the citizens of Annapolis at, for example, a Housing and Community Development Committee public meeting, but presumably as a proposal now ready for council consideration. I suggest that this proposal may eventually go one or the other way of the other 2 pieces of legislation originally up for a vote tonight, back for more study and lengthy deliberation, or for a council action that may well fall short of passage. I think the underlying reason for the possibility of the occurrence of delay and/or dead end is that the low-income housing proposal, like the Forest Drive Eastport sector study and the increase in parking fee, was not introduced early or thoroughly enough to the public, specifically with the assistance of citizen groups, including city boards and commissions. The long-established pattern of the Annapolis municipal body, the entire body, that governs and operates the city of Annapolis appears to be to assume responsibility for, exercise creative thinking about, and generate legislation for the needs and concerns of the citizenry without engaging that citizenry when it should, which is before the assumption of responsibility, exercise of creative thinking, and drafting of legislation. This stage of the process should come, admittedly, after the citizens have cast their votes for council members, but before the council forges ahead, often to a complete halt. The citizens should be fully heard, as fully as possible, as a collective group, not as a concerned constituent or constituents sitting down for a coffee or a drink with an alderperson, or even at a ward public hearing. The concerns actually expressed should be city news, public news, not items in a legislator's notebook. What I'm referring to this evening has a fairly new and popular but becoming tried and true phrase: transparency, upfront. Observation and even judgment of public policy and action issues can and should take place in citizen groups, groups that function for the citizens, not as mini think tanks from the mayor's office or the city council, and not as token recipients of the prevailing public will. Citizen boards and commissions should become more important as working bodies, especially as government operation in general moves farther and farther away from the results of across-the-aisle American consensus building. Citizen bodies with quasi-judicial power need to cultivate the input of constituents, not merely use their non-elected power to decide what is best for the populace, especially without giving the public adequate time, literally, for input. An impression that I took away from my brief service on the Annapolis Historic Preservation Commission is that basically the public has the time allotted by a ticking clock at public hearings to express his opinion about changes in preservation actions and policies.
Thank you, Carol.
The decisions are protected by a procedure based on laws that could be changed and guidelines that were often written long ago by professional bureaucrats. I'm a great admirer of professional bureaucrats, especially those in the public, in the National Park Service, but they are not direct representatives of the will of the people. It is interesting to speculate how the ticking clock will work in what will be the considerable upcoming public debate on the future of City Dock. One last paragraph. I look forward to seeing much more public deliberation of community matters facilitated by the Annapolis Transportation Board. And I hope that other boards and commissions, including those with structures written in law, not in the Constitution, however, will encourage greater public participation as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Oh, Carol? Alderman Annette, Carol? Alderman Annette has a question.
You obviously put a lot of thought into that. Could you?
I've put a lot of years into that.
Could you send us that? Do
I
you
will.
have it? I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Next up is Ellen Benitez.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Ellen Benitez, and I own 30 Pinckney Street here in Annapolis, and I've been the owner of that facility now for over 10 years. And I did want to speak out on the pending deliberation over the short-term rentals. And I want to tell a little bit of a personal story is in that, you know, these kind of decisions can really impact people economically. You know, the have and have-not sometimes will be affected under this situation. I have had some situations change in which I have had to go to a short-term rental this past year. It's not something I bought the place for, but repairs on these historic facilities can become pretty costly. And it was a way that I saw that I could reinvest into my property and increase its net worth, and at some point with the hope of selling, because I bought on the high. And so I wanted to put a real face to this and know that this deliberation can really have a true impact. And it's not something that I bought the place to do, but it's where I am today. And if this law passed, I think as deliberated, what it would do is have the consequence of resulting potentially in a fire sale. Do you know what I mean when I say a fire sale? That means that I would have to lower the cost and move my house to market to the benefit of somebody else who wouldn't maybe have to do this or would be able to deal with a long-term rental. I just don't think what's pending is fair. I think it causes real economic hardship. I don't feel like I'm running a business, but I understand the proponents. I feel like I'm running my family's economic, what I'm calling, me and my husband are calling the final quarter, if you know what I mean, planning for the future. We want to sell. It's just not sell ready yet, and this is the way we can invest back in our property. So I am, thank you, and just in short, I feel like I've been a great neighbor too. I paid my taxes, I shovel my sideway like anybody else that happens to live here. I've chased people from behind people's houses. I've let people use my bathroom. I've helped my neighbors. And I just hope that when you do this, you consider the economic impact it would have on me as a owner here in the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Yarrow. 102. Hello, how you doing?
What, Mayor?
I always get it wrong. Sorry, how do you pronounce it again? I got the pronunciation wrong, did I?
Yarrow.
Oh,
No, that's good. Thank you. Yes, my name is Yarrow. I live in Eastport. What else do you need to know?
Just your full address? Your full address in Eastport, please. Yeah. Your address? Yeah.
Oh, 102 Roosevelt Court.
Thank you.
All right, I'm here as well. I wanted to thing out that I think maybe with the short-term rental ordinance that we have not focused on at all, and would really like the downtown merchants to get on board with the amount of revenue that they may experience as a loss if we really restrict our short-term rentals. So I did up a fact sheet. I'm sorry I didn't bring as many copies, but I can certainly email it. And I'd like to say that my fact sheet is based on that Rockport Analytics study from 2019. And so all my numbers are based on that particular study. And the study was commissioned by the Visit Annapolis and Anne Arundel County. So the first fact I have here is that in that study it references that the whole hotel industry argues that short-term rentals aren't playing fair and by the same rules and have become an unfair competition. The next fact that's in there is short-term rentals cater to an entirely different clientele. And we'd like to say, for the most part, we're all very willing to charge and remit taxes, be licensed, be inspected, and I know, everybody I know actually manages their own short-term rentals, or they have a manager for that. And the bigger thing is that our short-term rentals are actually rated by the actual guests who stay with us. So if we get a poor rating on any of the booking platforms, we're really shooting ourselves in the foot. So most of us go out of our way to not only keep our properties immaculate, but to also make sure that our guests are accommodated in whatever they might need or wish to have. As far as us being short-term rentals being competition, a fact in that study says that 800,000 $1,000 was the hotel revenue increase between 2016 and 2018. The next fact is that short-term revenue increased $4 million in this kind of an increment. $5.4 million in 2016, $9.5 million in 2017, $13.6 million in 2018. Another fact that we'd like you to consider is that Annapolis is a very specific geographical area. It's not going to grow in its width and breadth, so it's just, therefore, no big growth can be expected because we aren't making more land and more space. So there's a generally accepted ratio in economics. For every $1 of accommodations, $1 spent on accommodations, that $1 is directly generates $3 of injected into the local economy by guests who go to our restaurants, our bars, and our shops and stores. In 2018 alone, short-term rentals in that study generated $40 million. So we have to look at the kind of economic impact that the short-term rentals are benefiting the city with. So then I go on to occupancy. The occupancy, first of all, can somebody tell me why the occupancy needs to be restricted? Does anybody know what is behind that? Okay.
Well, this is just general comments. This is just for a chance for you guys to speak to us. So,
yes.
Yeah, so generally we don't.
I got interrupted.
Alderman Annette, why 120 days?
120 days was picked out of a range of different municipal legislation, and it was more or less the midpoint. Uh-oh. It's coming here. I saw somebody go in there.
Okay, just gone by now. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that was just a midpoint. They picked that number, a mid-range number.
Okay, I can hardly hear you because the window's open, but I can give some statistics regarding the loss of revenue coming into the city for the 120-day limitation, according to that Rockport analytics study. Using the numbers of 502 short-term rentals that study references, the 120-day limitation will result in a loss of approximately $2 million per year to the local economy. Owner-occupied limitation, as listed in there, will result in a loss of approximately $14 million per year to the local economy. So those are numbers that can be easily computed in that study. In closing, my reason for being here is I really would like the council to think very carefully about legislation for short-term rentals. I'm not opposed to the legislation of short-term rentals, but the specifics are not as broad as they should be to be able to accommodate all the many different types of short-term rentals that are in our community. So I would just like to say that if we want to be one Annapolis, we have a lot of visitors who are international. They're coming with great travel experience, and they really expect to be able to spend their money the way they want to. So, you know, we're kind of comparing apples and oranges when it comes to accommodations. We have the old models of hotels and bed and breakfast and the new models of short-term rentals. So I think we just need to think about what is the world wanting and what can we do to make sure that they bring their dollars to Annapolis.
Thank you. Thank you, Yara. Thank you. Mark Tanner is next up.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Alderman Savage,
I think
Yara.
it's important I'm just general important, I think if we can keep people to their speaking time so everybody can have a chance to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Mark Tanner, 1394 Broadneck Court, Annapolis, Maryland. I'm not in the city of Annapolis. I'm over near Arnold area, but I own a short-term rental property in downtown Annapolis in the President's Hill community. And I bought that property at the peak of the real estate market, unfortunately. It was bought as a place for my son to live while he was in transition through some personal issues. Once those issues were resolved, I tried to sell that property, but it was no longer worth, in fact, today it's no longer worth what I paid for it. So I turned it into a long-term rental property. I rented that property for 10 years to long-term rentals, 5 different rental tenants. I saw it continue to deteriorate over the period of that 10 years. It was an eyesore in the community. There were plastic chairs in the front yard. The yard was not taken care of. The interior was in disrepair. So 2 years ago, we converted it to a short-term rental. And in those 2 years, it's been rented pretty consistently on weekends to Naval Academy families repeatedly, to boat show participants repeatedly. And we clean it every week. We take care of the yard every week. It's no longer an eyesore in the community. I feel like I'm actually contributing to Annapolis. Our guests come and they spend money in the bars and restaurants and speak so highly of Annapolis. I'm proud of Annapolis. I'm proud to live here. I'm proud to be able to contribute to the economy and the culture of Annapolis and turn it into a long-term rental again, which I'd have to do because I still can't afford to sell it. It would continue to just be a place where people live and don't really contribute to the culture and city of Annapolis. Thank you very much for your time.
Got a question for you, Gay?
Just out of curiosity, is the platform that you use most often Airbnb?
I use Airbnb and VRBO. Both.
I'm sorry, what was the last one?
HomeAway, VRBO, Vacation Rental by Owner.
Awesome, that's new to me, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Next up is Brad.
Hi, I'm Brad Mollett, owner of the short-term rental, 24 Fleet Street. I live in Washington, D.C. I originally purchased the house in 2011 with my wife, and we fell in love with the city, coming here on weekends, doing day trips, and it kind of turned into a love affair where we ultimately ended up buying, moved here, and we were here for 2 years until my wife's job demanded her to be in D.C. more than we wanted to. From there, we did a long-term rental of 2 years at a loss with former Naval Academy professors. And after that, we decided that it would be a more economical way for us to keep the place that we're going to eventually retire in, was to do short-term rentals. We've kept up the property pretty thoroughly. We always responsive to our people who stay there's concerns. But I was able to talk to Airbnb specifically about statistics for Annapolis specifically, and I can submit these for the record to hand off, but there were 30,900 individual guests in Annapolis last year alone, and there were 30,400 outbound guests, so it looks like 500 people decided to stay here from last year, the numbers. But the top 6 origin cities were from Washington DC, which was 1,800 people. So, you know, that could be, normally that third, you know, you were named the Washingtonians' #1 getaway, so obviously a lot more stayed than originally planned. And then there was 1,000 from Philadelphia. New York City was next with 1,000, or 990, and then Annapolis was 970. I think that number can attribute to probably families who have places here, but they didn't have enough space to accommodate them. So the average age of the booking guest was 42 years old. And I know there's been concerns that there have been rowdy houses that have, you know, had the cops called on them. But if you look at the average age of 42, you're not going to see a lot of those people being the people that are going to be the problems with police reports. So we're going to move back to the Annapolis area in the next 2 years for the schools. And that's always been our plan, was to come back. It won't necessarily be in 24 Fleet because it's only a 2-bedroom house. So we have 3 crazy kids. So we need to find a place close by if the law were to go into effect that you don't have to be 7.5 miles away. So a little more clarification from the city council of what the radius will be for that would be great. So the 120-day rule, with the 90 days that the General Assembly's in session, with I think approximately they get paid $119 a day. They can pay the Airbnb host. That only allows you 30 days for the rest of the year outside of commissioning and boat show to actually cover your mortgage. And what do you do on those other days that you're not, you know, renting it? Is it just sit idle? I mean, I have my in-laws there, but I'm sure they get sick of me asking about what's wrong with the house. I think one of the things that hasn't brought up is, you know, DC, in Washington DC, you can actually put the hotel tax on, work with Airbnb, the city work with the Airbnb to actually put the hotel tax on to, you know, cover some of that lost revenue you guys are missing. But those are my general points. I thought that, you know, overall, it's a good first start, but don't regulate those, you know, those folks who are abiding by the laws by, you know, being registered with the city as a short-term rental. And, you know, I appreciate, you know, you guys looking forward to, you know, positive legislation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just
I have a
quickly,
question for you. Alderman Arnett?
Yes.
Yeah, we love data. Can you give us the data and the source of it? Oh, great, thank you.
Yep.
What was the source?
Airbnb.
Okay.
So that's just Airbnb numbers?
Yes, so that doesn't include VRBO, HomeAway, FlipKey. So, I mean, the number's obviously larger, and just think about the economic impacts of what you may be doing if you're taking away 1,800 people that normally, you know, do day trips.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up was Mary Byra, but I don't see her in the front anymore. Mary, you still? Oh, there you are. Oh, sorry. You were on the other side. Thanks for my socks.
Hi.
Bonjour.
I wish Sylvia was here with me, but she's in Florida. Mary Byro Gasparano was my maiden name, I'm sorry. 280 Hilltop Lane, Unit J, Annapolis, Maryland, is where I live. And I am a little nervous, and I'll explain my outfit. I know I look a little bit like Patty Hearst and Carl Snowden when he was 18, I think. Your meetings sometimes probably bore you a little bit, but I wanted to mix it up a little bit. I get real nervous, so I had to do a little laughs when I'm up here. I wanted to talk about 2 particular subjects. Concern for the homeless in Annapolis. This is going to be a hard year for homeless people in Annapolis. I was speaking with Heather, or what's the young woman's name who has the office next to Brian? Hillary.
Hillary? Yep.
I was speaking with Hillary briefly today. It was the first time I met her, and I mentioned that it's going to be a hard year for the homeless in Annapolis, and she wasn't, she was interested in why, and I started explaining to her that it's going to be a hard year for the homeless in Annapolis because the library is closed on West Street. A lot of people went to that library to charge their phones. which are needed if they have to call social services or they need their phones for many reasons. The library being closed is a big burden to the homeless in Annapolis. Also, the market house having different hours adds to the burden for the homeless in Annapolis. There's actually quite a few things I've learned about the homeless in Annapolis. I've done some outreach to homeless in Annapolis starting when I moved here 26 or 27 years ago. Mayor Hopkins helped me. Actually, the first time I met a homeless lady, and he helped me, and I love him. He's my favorite mayor. He did simple things to help me. He did so much, though. I wrote a letter to the editor. He came over and knocked on my door and took me to lunch to thank me. He was such a humble guy. He's wonderful. But that homeless lady was in my life 16 years. 16 years. And I'm not a professional, but I tell you, I saved a lot of tax dollars. And I love that lady. And I love more homeless people. And you've seen some of the people, Gavin, Mayor Buckley, you've seen some of the people that I've reached out to and had a relationship with for over 2 years. And those two men are no longer homeless in Annapolis, but they face special burdens because they're elderly, homeless, Black people, and they face unique burdens that other people don't. And I'm going to bring this issue to this town over and over again, and I'm going to do it in different forums, because I'm tired of the ignorance of some people, and they don't know the special burdens, and I know some of them. And there's so much we can do in this town, and sometimes it's little steps to help somebody, and we need to start doing it. We need to change. We need to build more bridges, and one of the ways us white folks can build bridges with the Black community is start taking care of the elderly Black people in this community, especially the homeless. And I'm not going to shut up about that issue until my husband says I have to, and he's not going to. He's not going to. So it's going to be around. The other issue I wanted to bring up ties into that. I hear a lot of people talking about the historic district, I guess it is, in this short-term rental issue. And I think it's a perfect time. I've been talking to a lot of people around town have been talking about this idea of a mini reparations tax that we think can really be done, especially with this city council here. We think a mini reparations tax, now is the time, and you think outside the box, and you are creative, Mayor Gavin. You're the one who should really be. I think this can happen, and what I'll try and articulate, if I have another 2 minutes left, what we've been talking about, and that is a tax on anything sold in the historic district, which of course used to be Black and hardly has any Black people there anymore. Mr. Sims is still there, and I think one other woman whose name I don't know. I could be wrong. I might have my facts wrong, but I think I'm pretty darn close. I think I'm pretty close. So why not, when a house sells, charge them $500 or $1,000 and put it in a tax, put it in some kind of fund for the homeless people in Annapolis, not just Black, not just white, but homeless people in Annapolis, because what is going on now with the homeless isn't cutting it for everybody. There's sometimes little things that need to be done that cost money. And Justin Beeler, who is a friend of mine, and he is the county homeless outreach coordinator, and I have talked about these things. You don't have to be a professional to help a homeless person. And there's things we can do to help people at Newtown 20 and people at Robinwood feel like we care. You talk too much about the kids. The kids are important. Start helping the older people. I really want to talk about this more with people who care in this community. And I've talked to some churches, and some churches are real slow around this town, and some churches are wonderful. The church on, I want to make one last comment. I think that's it. Okay, if I got buzzed off, if that's it, I'm done.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
I hope.
Thanks for your 6 minutes. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you. Next up is Patricia McNally.
Good evening, Mayor Buckley, City Council members, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Patricia McNally. I've been up here before, and I live at 163 Prince George Street. And I'm here to speak in favor of R3319. In the past, I've worked on tourism and economic development programs like the National Trust Main Street and others across the country. There's always a delicate balance in addressing the needs of residents, commercial enterprises, and visitors. I feel a thriving downtown is critical, and accessible and available parking is key. We're in the process of addressing parking needs through recent legislation that was mentioned today, studies mentioned today, through outreach from our great organizations like Annapolis Partnership and various residents associations, and by expanding our public transportation systems. But I feel there's another important component to consider in addressing our parking situation: personal responsibility. I've listened to business owners talk against parking changes, saying their customers won't be able to park in front of or near their stores or eateries. Yet I've seen their employees park directly in front of their doors or nearby and feed a meter over and over and over again all day. I've also personally seen owners park their own cars in front of their stores and feed meters all day, even in the dead of winter around Christmas time, around the holiday time. By taking personal responsibility, there will be more parking spaces available for both shoppers and visitors and residents alike. Also, I would ask residents and locals to be mindful of their own parking, making sure not to take up 2 spaces, to see where other people might be able to fit in behind you or in front of you. And this too would provide spaces for neighbors, visitors, and shoppers. So please keep in mind we're all in this together. And with limited parking availability, we need to be part of the solution. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else like to come forward and speak? I have some people signed up here for the major city dock event and itinerant merchant sales. Just want to make sure you didn't sign in on the wrong one. Sean Sears, Manu, Julianne, and Hannah. Are you all here for the? Are you all here for the itinerant merchant thing, or are you here to talk about something different? Okay. Sorry, I wonder.
Hello, my name is Jessica Backler. I live at 506 President Street, and I'm here to speak about the short-term vacation rentals. As you know, I'm a resident of Eastport. Most of you know. I am a mom of 4 children. We travel a lot. And I don't think that anyone questions with the short-term vacation rental, the tax issue, the licensing of the buildings. But I think that the city and the administration, the council, is overreaching on a number of other things that get squarely into the idea of business, and is making laws that are specific to maybe certain areas or even certain blocks without considering how that affects the entirety of the city. I know I have read all of the arguments I've talked to people about it, I've read it on the forums, I've read it in the Capitol articles, and I think that when you look at things like the 120 days, when you look at things like the residency requirements, those are trying to put a limit on a business which the city doesn't really have the right or the responsibility to do. I've heard people say that we don't want to become like Dewey. We are not going to become like Dewey. We do not have just a beach. We have all of Annapolis. I live in a lower income part of Eastport, and I strongly support these short-term vacation rentals in my neighborhood. My block is almost completely rental homes, almost completely homes. My house, the house next door, and one other home on my block are full-time rentals. Yarrow's house, she is a full-time resident who does short-term vacation rentals. And every other house on my block, my 4 sides of my block, are rentals. And the majority of them are long-term rentals. And these short-term rentals that are there are phenomenal. I would like all of the long-term rentals to become short-term rentals, because the important thing about short-term rentals is that short-term rentals, their business model is upkeep. Long-term rentals, which you are not looking at trying to restrict or maintain or create any rules on those, their owners can live anywhere in the world. Their owners, they can rent for as long as they want to as many people as they want. The number of people that are living in some of the houses in my neighborhood, I don't even know, because it's constantly in and out. But the short-term rentals, their business model is keeping their homes nice. Their yards look nice. Their houses look nice. Their siding is kept up. Everything is kept up because nobody is going to short-term vacation rent a house that is falling apart. And when you are trying to legislate something like that, saying that they can only be there for 120 days, when you're looking at the people who own those homes, one of the homes that's in my neighborhood is owned by a Navy family. They bought it for their son when he was at the academy, and they kept it in the idea that eventually their son, who's remained in the Navy and is a career Navy, is going to come back to Annapolis, and they want to have a place for him to stay. They cannot afford to do a long-term rental because as the gentleman who spoke previously, long-term rentals, and I'm also speaking as someone who has managed friends who live in other places' homes as both the short-term vacation rentals and long-term vacation rentals. The wear and tear on a long-term rental is so much more than a short-term rental because of what happens when you just have somebody living in a house, just like in your own house, as all of you know. And to say, and that type of business is really important. So for the people who live in other places that want to come back to Annapolis, as that gentleman said, or as my neighbor said, being able to keep their home is really important, and being able to stay in their home. And to say that my neighbor has to sell her house or do a long-term rental, which she can't afford to do because long-term rentals in our neighborhood don't make enough to cover the mortgage, is not fair. I understand that in certain parts, maybe right downtown or over on 2nd Street in Eastport, that may be an issue, but in our neighborhood and in plenty of other neighborhoods in the city, short-term vacation rentals are what allow people to keep their homes and to keep their homes at a reasonable rate. In particular, that neighbor just tried to put her house on the market and sell it, and her 4-bedroom, 2-bath house in Annapolis, she had to take off the market because she couldn't sell it the only offer she got was for $260,000 for a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house in Eastport. The only offer after 180 days, I don't remember how long. The house has been on the market for almost half a year. $260,000, but she can't afford to do the long-term rental. I'm sorry, I know I'm going to go over, and I'm sorry, Rob, I know you said that, but I run a business out of my home. There are plenty of people here who run businesses out of their home and, run their own entrepreneurship businesses, and the city isn't legislating us. So nobody's telling me I can only work in my house 120 days a year, and nobody would try because that's ridiculous. And I want you to think, when you all go on your vacation for the next month, when you're traveling around the country, look at how Annapolis is compared to other places. We don't have campgrounds. I just traveled across the entire country. A lot of places have campgrounds. We don't have that option here. I have a family of 6. I can't afford to stay in the hotels in Annapolis if I were coming to Annapolis. I need to find places, or in other cities like that. I stay in short-term rentals because that's what fits my family. No bed and breakfast owner wants my 4 kids coming to their bed and breakfast. And I can't afford, I promise you, they don't. And I can't afford to stay in the hotels, and we don't have campgrounds. We don't have any alternative to that. So I want you to think over the next month, when you're traveling and you're doing your vacations, is look at what it really does. And are those rules and restrictions that you're putting on, are they good for the whole of the city, or are they speaking just to the concerns of a few blocks in a very small part of the town? And please consider that, because it's really important to our entire city.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you. Thank you. Next up, please, come forward. Thank you. Yeah, sure hand, pass them to sure hand them out. State your name and address.
Mayor Buckley, Alderman, Alderwoman. My name is Sean Sievers. 89 Charles Street and 155 Prince George Street. I'm here opposed to the short-term rental cap of 120 days. I have my short-term rental permits on both houses, have abided by all rules, from renovating a house, putting sprinkler systems in, electric fire alarms in tough areas. Pretty much did everything the city asked for that. Is it possible, you know, with people with short-term rental permits and have followed these rules to be somewhat grandfathered in of the 120 days or over the 120 days somehow and not have that restriction on us? With hosting people in Naval Academy families, we try to showcase our town with both houses. The picture that you have now is just, I have them in both houses in 89 Charles and 155 Prince George Street, both areas with close restaurants, entertainment, stuff that we recommend our guests to hit up. We let them know how long it takes to get there. You know, 1 minute walk, 2 minute walk, 3 minute walk. When I go to clean up after, I find bags of all those restaurants in the house. I mean, like I said, we try to showcase the city. Everyone here that's speaking loves the city. I do think it would be, someone said earlier, a fire sale if we did get those 120 days. The market of the city would look pretty bad with houses on the market. So, thanks for your time. That's all I have.
Hang on, just got some questions. Alderman Gates.
Not a question, just a response and a statement kind of to both you and Jessica, and just appreciation for the short-term rental process and what you guys do to do for our city. When I travel, I use those apps, Airbnb and, you know, all the other stuff, for some of the same reasons that Jessica stated, just because of the expense. These are things that you often see, advertisements for the community. So I think, you know, any way to do, any legislation to derail that process and to derail, you know, bringing people into our city is something that we definitely should look at. So thank you guys both for that.
And everyone that comes in always comments on the picture you have and is like, thanks, like you saved me time. My family had a great time. You know, it's always positive and it's supporting the local community. So, thank you.
Alderman Tierney just wants to make a statement.
I just want to say that I think I need to explain that I'm recused from this legislation, and I just want to make sure that my body language doesn't represent anything. I'm just kind of uncomfortable because I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do during a public hearing on legislation that I'm recused from, and I don't want anyone to take it the wrong way. I support your public testimony. I support you all having a business. I support my colleague for this legislation, and I just want you to know that I'm just trying to waffle this through. So thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Anybody else like to come forward and speak?
What?
How you doing? Hi there.
Good. Hi, Julian Donnelly, 165 King George Street. Good evening, City Council, Mr. Mayor. I'm here to address the new parking ordinance that went into effect. I believe that perhaps with some compromise, we could come to a fair and equitable solution for all of us. We could welcome visitors into our city instead of pushing them to other locations like we are now. Since the new ordinance was implemented July 1st, I personally have lost more than $3,000 in bookings. My guests did not rebook in a hotel or bed and breakfast in Annapolis. They spent their money in other towns. As they put it, we are going to go spend our money in a town that welcomes us. This past weekend, our city asked guests, one who was 7 months pregnant and an elderly couple, to walk about a mile to Gott and Knighton garages and 110-degree heat index to go get their cars out of our city garages. Hillman was not an option. One of our guests is there for over 30 days, so they got a parking pass over at Knighton Garage, and they're over 70 years old and walking in this heat to go get their car in and out. The circulator doesn't go around down to King George Street, and it does not go late at night. That means we're not encouraging visitors. Why not charge for a guest hang tag? Maybe one tag per dwelling unit. I bet there's a lot of us that'd be willing to pay a monthly fee for that. If 300 units paid $75 a month, that's $270,000 a year, or more than $250,000, as one of you put, to line the city coffers. At $100 each, that's $360,000 a year. Excess cars would still go to the city garages, but at least they would have a mode of transportation when it's excessive heat or bitter cold and icy out to get safely to those city garages. If you want to do demand parking, as brought up at the last city council meeting, we could charge $100 in the high season and $50 in the off season. Also, parking restrictions need to be enforced equally across the board in all the districts, not just pick and choose which ones get ticketed and other ones that do not. Some of the numbers that you all had kind of inquired about before in terms of number of, not really related to this, but number of days that homes are rented out. I have 3 units in our smallest one last year rented out in 2018, 212 days, and another one rented out for 283 days last year. So 120 days would really impact me. My rentals are down since the new parking ordinance has been passed. Just a lot of people are thinking about leaving, including people that were coming in for Plebe Parents Weekend and booked, gosh, I think they booked in November when I had to notify them that, I'm sorry, there's no parking. They are currently looking for another option. For hourly parking data, City of Philadelphia, this afternoon I paid $2.25 an hour in Philly with a 3-hour limit. At a beach town this weekend, I paid $1 an hour with a 4-hour limit. And all of them are using the meterless parking meters that you do now, so they get all that extra money. So when the car pulls out, they're not taking that extra time that currently we're losing that money that's out there now. So maybe if we upgraded the system, we would get a lot of money that way. And also, last year in 2018, I only utilized 25% of the parking spaces as if I had long-term tenants in my spots. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm just going to be very brief. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and aldermen and women. My name is Hannah Garagiola, and I live at 89 Shipwright Street, and I operate a woman-owned business located at 48 Maryland Avenue. I'm with Compass Government Relations Partners, and I'm here today representing At Home Annapolis, and that's a business that brings hundreds of thousands of tourism dollars to the city of Annapolis each year. And if I could, Mr. Mayor, a lot of folks have left for the night because the hour is late, but if I could ask the folks in opposition of 02619 to stand up, just to show that there are people in numbers. Great. So not everyone spoke, so we're sparing you a little bit. I just wanted to also say thank you to Alderman Arnett, because we've had a lot of really positive dialogue, and I believe that you truly want to work with all sides to come up with a fair piece of legislation. I also have spoken to your office, Mr. Mayor, and several other offices of you all, and everyone seems willing to kind of find the right compromise and strike that right balance. And I think for us, it would really be seeing the 120-day limit struck, and also I think Alderman Arnett, you've mentioned the primary residence piece is being worked on as well, and we really appreciate that. People in Annapolis love living here. It's a beautiful town with a lot of visitors, and we just really want to protect our investments. So once again, we look forward to participating in an open dialogue, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Hannah. How you doing?
Good evening, fellow citizens of Annapolis. I've been here a long time. I grew up here. Glad to see faces that I've known for a long time, including Mayor Buckley. Thank you for serving our city.
Thank
My
you.
name's William Small. My address is 702 Melrose Street. It's the house I grew up in. I just bought it from my sister, who bought it from our parents. And I'm doing everything I can to make the numbers work on that stretch of a purchase. And I have owned a house on Severn Avenue in Eastport for the last 15 years, just about. And I'm now operating that as partly a long-term and partly a short-term rental. It's 2 units. I love the city. Like, what I'm looking at before me is exactly what I think it should be. What we do is like, what we do things for meanings and feelings. And you all, our leaders are the meaning that I want to see Annapolis have. Like, we do this together. It's the future of our people. It's what America means to me is like, together, we come together and we figure out how to thrive together. And the decisions that are made in this house, in this chamber, affect the way that we thrive together. You lead us on how to thrive, how the city thrives together. It's like the city is like a big ecosystem of people trying to figure out how to scrape together their funds, and the city's trying to scrape together its funds. So we're all like, down here on the homeowner level, we're trying to manage our micro businesses, and you guys are managing the macro business of the city's economy. And so you guys organize how we all aggregate our money together, how we all the earnings of Annapolis, you guys take a portion and decide how to allocate that so that we thrive. And it's great to see you all allocating some of that to celebrate some of our citizens who are thriving at basketball. I'm so happy that was an excellent way to lead into how we are thriving together. And I've been to places where there's less friction. Annapolis has always been a place where there's a lot of friction about making progress. And I want to celebrate what we can do to make great steps to welcome others to come see how we thrive together. What this hall represents is that citizens from around the world would love to see that, wow, like people of all races actually get together and talk cordially with each other. Like, I think that this is a tourist attraction, and I love that about Annapolis. And I think that it's a great place to have changed our history from where we came from to this. So I welcome people from out of town to my Airbnb rentals of various economic means that otherwise probably couldn't come. They certainly couldn't come stay in some of Annapolis's hotels. And I think that Airbnb as a platform makes it possible for other people who otherwise couldn't come camp here, as Jess indicated, because there's no place to come for. Actually, I offer a camping spot. So there is one place that you can camp in Annapolis. So people of all economic abilities should be able to come and see this tourist attraction, and see like that people of all stations and colors can walk together on these streets and think about where we're going as a people together. And I really would like to see the legislation, the idea of legislation be focused on how to guide us to thrive together rather than how to regulate an industry that is actually regulating itself very nicely. The feedback system on these vacation platforms is very strong at helping to guide the individual property so that we're making a good offering. The market will tell us if we're not, because we'll fail. So really what we need from the regulatory side is, to level the playing field. Like, I wouldn't want to see, really, I want as much success as I can get. The city should have as much success as it can have. We shouldn't, the idea of being fair with the hotel industry, yeah, that matters. I would like to see, 360 days a year of rentals, not 120. Well, if you're going to limit it to 120, well, are you going to limit the hotels to 120? That makes no sense. We want to bring more guests to Annapolis to come see this awesome place and see how we are. I want to think, well, the city of Annapolis would like to get more rentals so it can earn more taxes, right? So don't shoot us all in the foot together. We want to thrive together. So lastly, like another speaker had said, cities around the country can work with Airbnb or the broker to directly charge the tax to the customer and remit the tax to the taxing authority. There's no, the need is, we individuals shouldn't be like dealing with micro taxes and submitting micro taxes to the comptroller. We should be, the Airbnb, the broker, can aggregate them all, submit them to the comptroller, and we don't need to deal with that. And this comptroller doesn't need to deal with all these micro transactions. So please, do that better. And thanks for hearing me. I appreciate you letting me go over without interrupting. And thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Thanks
for all you do.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward and speak? Thank you.
Real quick. I'm Manon Schladen. I live at 303 Washington Street in Eastport. I am a short-term, it's really even hard to identify myself as a short-term rental person because I think of myself as a host. That's why I got into short-term renting. I have done long-term rentals. I have had my children living in my house, which is really my family house because it's been in the family for almost 100 years. This is obviously a really nuanced issue. I've been surprised. I share a lot of experiences with people who've spoken here tonight. So real quick, I just wanted to share some more that maybe we haven't heard. So first of all, a short-term rental isn't always a short-term rental. If you look at the model that's presented by, say, Airbnb, they encourage hosts to provide discounts for folks who stay longer, which kind of makes sense. So I've had people sign on to stay with me for a week and stay for 6 months, and the price adjusts that way. If I were restricted to 120 days, I would have to take a student and say, okay, you have to, move your junk out and find someplace else to stay. Another issue is that there seems to be a sense that short-term rentals are more profitable than long-term rentals. Well, I don't know, maybe I'm not doing it right, but that's never been the case for me. I've made a lot more money when I just rent the house and kind of let it sit. Now, I don't mean to do that, but it's very, very hard, I think as many people here tonight have indicated, to stay on top of a property that is essentially, you're not part of it, you're not in there. I make a lot less money as a short-term rental landlord? I don't know, whatever, than I did as a long-term. But it's more satisfying because I never feel like my neighbors are angry with me because my grass isn't mowed and my house isn't painted and my flowers aren't watered, because they always are. And I guess, and I just, when we finish, the whole idea of hosting versus renting, I see that it's a business. Somebody talked about having a business from home. So I'm a researcher and I work out of my house. So I kind of get that it is a business, but it's not, because it's very entrepreneurial and it's very personal. And most of us made life decisions, at least I did, based on the thought that, well, gee, if push comes to shove, I can always rent a room. And I would not want to be in a position where I might end up, like many people have discussed tonight, losing a house that my grandfather built with his own 2 hands by himself, working only on Saturday and after work, no Sundays, because I had made decisions thinking that I was always going to have that heritage and I could always manage to keep it by sharing it with other people. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward and speak? Please come forward. Yeah.
Hello, good evening. My name's Kim Hindle, and I live at 222 West Street. I actually had no intention of coming up and speaking this evening. I am here in support of the short-term rentals. One thing I did feel compelled to mention is I do not have a short-term rental, but I have a business where I do home improvement work, house makeover stuff. And although it seems obvious, perhaps, that you should consider that the trickle effect of people that are working in these homes to keep them very nice for the rentals. Okay, I go in and I might make things look pretty, or I go in and repair something. But the trickle effect is the stores that are getting the paint purchases, the contractors who are repairing something. You can see what I'm saying, the roof improvements, the yard improvements, the money that's spent around town. So there is a trickle effect that affects way more people than just the renters and the homeowners. And if I am making money, then I'm spending that in town, if I'm spending it at a business. So I think that's something to consider too, about who lives locally and who's getting work out of it as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Oh, sorry, Dawn, you have a question? Okay.
I'm always here late at night. I'm Jackie Sweetak, and I own 26 South Street, and my husband and I own 26 South Street, and we live in Millington, Maryland. You guys have heard my story a lot. You know, we bought this building 10 years ago. We renovated it. It was in the most horrible condition. We've brought it up to code standards, sprinkler, license, the whole 9 yards. So I was going to speak about tourism. I think that we've covered that tonight. But part of, you know, I'm listening to 20-plus people basically beg for their livelihoods. They're asking for permission to use properties that they own. It just doesn't feel right. It feels like we're begging you guys. So I have to ask, have you guys received a legal opinion from anybody about this? Have you gotten legal advice from, or an opinion from our past Attorney General or any other legal advice about this issue?
Alderman Annette? Yes, so various municipalities we've looked around and...
Has it been shared with any of the rest of us? I mean, are we privy to know of this information?
So it's probably not like a question thing, but we can definitely circle back around with you and find out about that. I'm not sure, particularly myself, but you know, it's not my legislation. Yep.
Well, I appreciate you taking all the time and listening to all of us request for the ability to use our properties in the way that we all thought was legal and that we've been functioning legally all these years.
Thank
Thanks.
you so much. Thank you. Anybody else like to come forward and speak? Seeing no I'm sorry, Alderman Gay would like to say something.
Well, no, I just wanted to point out that we started the public comment at 8:10. It's about to be 10 o'clock. And that takes away from our actual time to discuss and talk about some of the potential changes that we would like to see take place. And most of the time when we get to that point, the residents aren't here. So there has to be some sort of compromise. I'm sure individuals have already discussed that, where we are able to listen to the public in an effective way and then do the actual job that they elected us to do, which is discuss and determine end goals for this legislation. Again, we started at 8:10, it's 10 o'clock.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for your comments tonight. So, seeing no motion in the chamber, I declare the comments by the general public closed. Ms. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar include appointments, beginning with AP 10919, the appointment of Karma O'Neill to the Arts and Public Places Commission, AP 11219, the appointment of Kurt Riegel to the Transportation Board, AP 11319, the appointment of Lauren Hunter to the Transportation Board, AP 11619, the appointment of David M. DeQuinzio to the Transportation Board, AP 11719, the appointment of Carol Kelly to the Transportation Board, AP 11919, the reappointment of Frederick Sussman to the Financial Advisory Commission, AP 12019, the appointment of Edward Meehan to the Financial Advisory Commission, AP 12119, the reappointment of Bob Burden to the Financial Advisory Commission. Next are the supplemental appropriations, beginning with SA 320 related to OEMD fire, SA 420 related to police revenue, SA 520, which is also related to police revenue, SA 620, which pertains to fire department revenue. Next are the legislative actions on first reader, starting with O2819, the tattoo parlor, O2919, purchasing and procurement, R3619, critical area overlay fees, R3819, peddlers, hawkers, and itinerant merchants fines, R3919, payment in lieu of property taxes for Town Courts LLC. This is the end of the consent calendar.
Okay, so we're going to remove R39-19, payment in lieu of property taxes, from the consent calendar. Okay, thank you.
Move
Any
approval
other-
of the consent calendar?
Anything else?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Opposed? All right.
Mayor Buckley?
Yes.
No, call it.
Aye.
Alderman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Gay? Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderman Payon?
Aye.
Alderman Pendle Charles?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Ms. City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda.
Next item on the agenda is public hearing, beginning with Resolution R3419, major city dock event and itinerant merchant sales in the Historic District.
Okay, first person signed up to speak is Sean Siebers. Are you out there? Okay, sorry, might have been, Manu? Anyone?
Go on.
Julian Donnelly was in the last group, right? Okay, I think that was, people signed up for the other things, so anybody else like to speak on this legislation? Okay, seeing no one here, I declare the public hearing closed. The City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Next item on the agenda is legislative actions on second reader, beginning with Charter Amendment CA 719, City Clerk.
So moved.
Is there a motion to adopt CA 719?
Second.
Second. Discussion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And a no? Okay.
Third reading?
Is there a motion to adopt CA-7-19 on third reader?
So moved.
Second.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Gay?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderman Payon?
Aye.
Alderwoman Pendle Charles?
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. The City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda.
Next item on the agenda is ordinance O2319, Office of Law, City Clerk.
Is there a motion to adopt O-23-19 on second reader?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favour say, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt O-23-19 on third reader?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Gay?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderman Payon?
Aye.
Alderwoman Pendle Charles?
Aye.
Ayes have it. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Next item on the agenda is Resolution R2719, Eastport and Forest Drive Communities and Governmental Agencies Task Force.
So moved.
Is there a motion to adopt R-27 on 19?
Second.
Thank you. In a second. Any discussion? You guys are moving right along.
Amen.
Any discussion?
This is,
on the amendments.
yeah, there's a number of
Okay,
amendments.
so let's talk about the Pendle Charles Amendment.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Alderman Savage and I have come to a friendly consensus regarding all 12 amendments. He will be withdrawing amendments 10, 11, and 12, and we will be motioning to adopt amendments 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Okay, so that's the
Second.
motion to amend? Yep.
Yes.
Move the amendments as a group?
Yes?
Yeah, she did already.
She did it already, and he
Okay, and
seconded.
we've got a second. Did you second it, Rob?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Is there a motion to adopt R-27-19 as amended on second reader?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to be added as a sponsor. Thank you.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Aye.
Alderman Gay.
Aye.
Alderman Savage.
Aye.
Alderman Arnett.
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney.
Aye.
Alderman Payon.
Aye.
Alderman Pendle Charles.
Aye.
Okay, Ms. City Attorney, please present the next item on
I
the
think our
agenda.
streak's been broken here. The next one. Our streak's been broken with the next one.
Didn't we just get that out of the way early on?
Next item on the agenda is Resolution R3319, parking meters, fees.
Shouldn't be controversial at all. Is there a motion to adopt R-33-19 on second reader? Ellie,
So moved.
is there a second?
A second.
Okay. Okay, who's the first on the discussion?
Just for clarification, we're discussing the resolution not amended. This is the $4 an hour parking fee at the City Dock lot, the Donner lot, and the Basil lot. All other parking meters would be $2 an hour.
Okay, it's before any amendments, Alderman Payon.
Correct, no amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In going through this and going through the parking utilization analysis prepared in 2017, which, by the way, was a pretty thorough analysis, I thought, I would like to have the information that several of us requested during the discussion, and that is what are some of the alternative methods of raising the money that we would like to raise. I realize the purpose of this is to drive people off the dock and into the Hillman garage at this point, a garage that may not be there in a year or two, but I think that the only place this is going to drive local people, I want to emphasize local people, is on up Main Street and on out to the Annapolis Town Center or some other place. I also think that I would like more information, and I have to say that Alderwoman Tierney did, I guess not everything humanly possible to provide information, but she certainly did an awful lot to do that. My questions are not with her or her determination to provide information. That's not my point at all. But I would like to know what alternatives we have, and I just think that there are other ways of doing this, and I've got very great concerns, and I haven't even gotten to the ULI recommendations. We don't know what they're going to be, but we do know, if I know Robert, he will be on time and they will come out in October. And I think we may be faced with a very real possibility of adopting one measure tonight and having to, if not reverse ourselves, at least alter what we have done in a very brief period of time, 3 or 4 months. I don't understand why we would do this with knowing that there is, larger program, if you will, coming at us in just a very short amount of time. It doesn't make any sense to me. Therefore, if we go and vote tonight, then mine's going to have to be a no, because I don't feel like I have all the information I would like to have. I would not oppose this being postponed, at least until we come back in September and maybe have a better idea of what the ULI recommendations are going to be, and have a little more information, particularly about the revenue that keeping the meters going later into the evening would generate, as opposed to an outright raise. And also an alternative would be perhaps a very small raise on meters across the city, none of which I really favor. I don't think they're a great idea, but I think raising a small raise at all meters is, I think, vastly preferable to a huge raise at some very key meters from an economic standpoint. I'm also not aware of businesses, whether they've been consulted what they have to say about this. I don't understand how we could vote on this without hearing from them. I mean, some of what they say is certainly would be predictable, but not all of it, and some of them I think could offer some very good insights on maybe some other alternatives.
Is that a motion to postpone?
Well, I was hoping not to be the one to make it, but I will be.
Second.
I'll move that we postpone the vote reluctantly, because I think I would like to see something done, but it just doesn't make any sense up against the ULI report. To me, at least it doesn't.
Was it seconded?
I seconded.
But we're still in discussion on that.
A motion to postpone is kind of trumps the motion off this on the floor. And he has second.
There's a motion and a second,
There's a motion on the
Alderman
floor
Arnett.
with a second
And
to
remember,
postpone.
we have said a lot of this stuff earlier today.
Right.
So if we are going to say it
Yeah,
again,
no.
remember, we have you on
This is
tape.
brand
What are you
new,
trying to tell us, Mr. Mayor?
brand new. One of the reasons that I support the motion to postpone is because I find intriguing part of the city manager's fiscal impact, and it's the last paragraph where it says the council could also appropriate the increase in revenue for equipment, signage, and other improvements which would in turn generate additional revenue, replacing single-space meters and multi-space meters. And one of the things that I find intriguing is this isn't really dynamic parking. We just have two different single rates. If we had smart equipment, we really could get into a true dynamic parking that could have multiple rates during the day. And I would like to see that throughout the city. Again, I think that it's good for that area, it's good for the city writ large, and could well generate a lot more revenue. I do agree also with the fiscal impact note that we do have this obligation, this onus on us to start to run down this money that we owe the general fund. So I think for all the reasons we talked about that Alderman Payon outlined, but also because we need more information on ways that we can do this better, and I'd like to hear about that and have a dialogue. And I am willing to work during the August break to expedite this if that's what's required.
Alderman Gay was next. No?
Yeah, I'm confused as to why we would want to postpone a project that has been postponed for 10 years.
It's not this project.
This was the project that I referred to earlier that spoke about the increase or the change in funding from the comprehensive plan that says that we would consider doing this. Parking should be priced according to demand. Spaces in the highest demand should be priced at the highest rate. This, again, was from the 2009 comprehensive plan. So I'm not sure why we would want to push that back again. Alderman Payon, would you consider this 90-day period as a trial or just to see how it would work out? I'm really confused as to why we, again, are pushing this concern further down the line. I understand the approaching ULI report, but is that something, again, could this be viewed as a trial while we wait in anticipation for this report?
No, I don't think so. It would be too expensive as a trial. And I would also say that a number of the recommendations in that comprehensive report have been enacted. So it's not like...
Well, that's my concern, is that we have recommendations that us as a council should follow, and this recommendation... Well, should we not consider following the recommendations of the comprehensive plan?
I think there are lots of recommendations that we shouldn't follow. There are lots of them that we should.
So I guess what the point is that the alternatives that you guys are now bringing up are 10 years late. Why wouldn't, I'm confused as to why these alternative ideas were not introduced prior to Mrs. Tierney or Alderwoman Tierney introducing this legislation. Were these ideas that we were not thinking of in terms of reducing the deficit, or?
Thank you. Alderwoman Tierney?
Okay. I'm going to talk slow so you'll understand me. The reason why I'm bringing this to a vote tonight is I do not want to postpone it, because then we're going to get into the planning. Keyword is planning of the ULI Parking Committee. The ULI Parking Committee is going to come up with a bunch of recommendations this October. They're not going to be putting coins in meters. It is a plan. And they promised everyone that there would be no loss of parking downtown. That's a big lift. That's a lot of variables, a lot of moving parts. So if we postpone tonight, we're postponing, number one, we're postponing revenue for at least a year, possibly 2 years. Because I don't think Hillman's going to happen till then. This was the best, most harmless piece of the parking program that we could take to get revenue for what is needed now. There are broken meters. There's not enough shuttles. That we want to enhance we want to increase our enforcement. We can't go up to parole in other places as best we can right now. And we're certainly not going to be able to do that if we don't take advantage of having this very available revenue. It is a smart choice of revenue. It is the least harmless. And I can't believe you don't trust that. And I can't believe you're willing to wait another year and a half for any piece of revenue, because these bi-monthly meetings are going to be pretty depressing, because we're not going to be able to say, yeah, SB Plus, do this, do this, do this, do this, because we won't have the money. We do not have the money. So I just want to make myself clear. That's all.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to postpone. Sure. So let's take a vote on that, please.
Point of information, we really need to postpone to a time certain.
Absolutely.
And
Needs a
so
date.
my idea is we postpone to the first council meeting in September. I don't know if you would accept that as.
Fine.
That's not a year. That's till September. And I hope we're going to be given more information and more options in the interim. And I'm looking to the administration to provide that.
And could I just ask SP Plus, the season, the peak season you had on the chart there, finished when?
Give or take October.
So you had a chart there that showed an example of that if we just did it in the peak season, which is something that's been talked about in the group, so October. So if we delay till September, we'll be...
And then you've got, of course, reprogram meters and stuff like that, so you're through the peak season. It's not instant, the day doesn't go into instant effect.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you. So if we postpone it until September, we could have a tantamount to a 1-month trial period that would take us beyond boat shows.
No, because like I mentioned, if you were to vote on it today, the rate would not change tomorrow morning. It takes time to reprogram the systems. What date in September would that occur? What is that date? Is it September 1st or September 30th?
12th or something, the 9th? The 9th
Maybe,
of September.
might get a month. Although the boat shows are in October, right?
Oh, that's right, boat
Yeah,
shows.
so you'd have there'd be no trial.
You would get nothing.
Okay. Well, on another note, if we
We'll lose them in October anyway.
if we postpone it, would you have an opportunity to bring us back the information we're seeking?
Of course.
The other options?
We have the.
We can do that at any time.
We
Okay.
we have the data available for expanded meters till 9 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay.
That report's finished.
Could you get that to us tomorrow? Or?
Yes.
Sure.
Alderman Gay?
Again, with the motion to postpone, if they're telling us that this could take, we would miss the entire purpose of this bill if we postpone it. So I'm confused as to why we would do so. Just allow it to go through the process. We can see if it doesn't work. I mean, the council has took back its votes before. Why not give this a trial is my question to any of the colleagues who wish to postpone it.
Alderman Annette?
Because there's a lot of other alternatives to consider that we haven't been given.
But I think,
The alternatives of doing it across the city as opposed to this location, the alternative of expanding the amount of time that the meters are in effect. There are a lot of things that, but also, we have constituents that we're responsible to who have indicated that they are concerned about this, and we don't have answers to give to them. We asked for this kind of information. 3 of us had lunch with Alderman Tierney, and we said that we were uncomfortable and we needed this information. We get it tonight at the council meeting. That's not enough time to make a considered decision. We don't just do these things snap. There's a lot of people's lives that get affected by this, and we need to consider that.
I think I understand that point, but to what I was getting at earlier is that I'm not sure how long each of the respective members have been on the council, but we've had the time. We knew this was an issue. And I think those alternative ideas that you guys have had, the expansion of the meter times, working this further up West Street, those are things that could have been proposed years ago. So why not, when the Alderwoman is presenting a solution that could assist us in this time, why not, just go with the recommendation instead of postponing it again? My fear is that if we postpone it, we'll get into deeper trouble or get into the weeds once we do bring this back up again on the 9th or whenever.
I'm just going to call it, so.
Yeah, I'd like to move to, I'd like to call a vote because I would
Okay.
like the opportunity for
So
the amendment if it.
We have a motion to postpone on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those,
Are you calling the question?
Ellie did, yeah.
Well, we need a vote on the calling the question then.
I was just going to cut the vote, but did you call the question? Or?
Well, okay.
That's not, probably shouldn't do that, Ellie. Yeah, withdraw that.
Did you get a second on that?
No, she's not, she's going to withdraw that.
Yeah, I'll withdraw.
Okay, so we're going to vote on the postponement. All those in favor of the postponement say aye.
Aye.
Against, say no.
No. Roll call.
Roll call,
Okay, Mayor Buckley,
no.
Alderman Finlayson,
Aye.
Alderman Gay,
No.
Alderman Savage,
No.
Alderman Arnett,
Aye.
Alderman Tierney,
No.
Alderman Payon,
Aye.
Alderman Pendle Charles.
No.
The motion is defeated.
Okay, so back to any further discussion on the, so the motion failed.
The resolution.
Ellie, are you going to propose an amendment to the motion of Article 33?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have an amendment, and my computer just died. No. When the $4 was introduced, it got a strong reaction, mostly because of the impression of it being doubling. So I proposed an amendment after consultation with SP Plus to amend it to $3, with it being calculated back down to $2 during the off-season. And they have provided us with that revenue. So,
Okay, so that's a motion. There's a motion to amend RDS 33-19 on second reader. Can I get a second on that? Second, okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. Is there a motion to adopt R-33-19 as amended on second reader?
So moved.
Second.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley,
Yes?
Alderman Finlayson,
No.
Alderman Gay.
Yes.
Alderman Savage.
Aye.
Alderman Arnett.
No.
Alderman Tierney.
Aye.
Alderman Payon.
No.
Alderman Pendle Charles.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries.
All right. That was shorter than I thought. Ms. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Next item on the agenda is Resolution R3419, Major City Dock Event and Itinerant Merchant Sales in the Historic District.
Is there a motion to adopt R-34-19 on second reader?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Is this just a call or roll call straight away? Okay. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley.
Yes.
Alderman Finlayson.
Aye.
Alderman Gay.
Aye.
Alderman Savage.
Aye.
Alderman Arnett. Alderman Tierney.
Aye.
Alderman Payon.
Aye.
Alderman Pendle Charles.
Aye.
Ms. City Attorney, please present. Ayes have it. Ms. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Next item on the agenda is Resolution R2819, Larkin Street Commemoration.
And I think we have is there a motion to withdraw R-28-19 on second reader?
So moved.
Okay. A second for that?
Second.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Ms. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Next item on the agenda has been removed from the consent calendar. Legislative action on first reader. Resolution R3919, Payment in lieu of property taxes, Town Courts LLC.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt R-39-19 on first reader?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
I had a question in regards to this.
I'll get a second and I'll get to you.
Okay.
Second.
Second. Alderman Gay? Yep.
This is my first time hearing about this particular project was when we received the email. And I have a number of concerns in regards to the proposed idea for 47 or 42 townhomes, and the work out of that. Like, is there a way we can see like a proposed plan? And I understand that there's a traffic light to be introduced, and I looked at the location, which is 210 West Street. There are significant challenges in terms of the entrance and exit of the particular location. Environmental concerns with a gas station being immediately next door. What are the, maybe you guys have discussed this prior to me being a member of the council, but I'm just asking to be caught up on this particular project.
So, Alderman Pendle Charles, and we can all spend some time on it whenever you would like, sure. Alderman Pendle Charles? Yeah.
I've been working on this probably for the past 3 years. It was a law school question. It's had so many twists and turns, to be quite honest. It started a few years ago when they came to us. Involved in all of this too was the location of the Monarch Academy, which is back there. But anyway, as we went through the process, we realized several things. Number one, that Gibraltar was a privately owned roadway, so we had to go through the process of finding heirs and publicizing and that sort of thing, and going through the ownership. There was, way back when, a proposal to build, might have been a couple of hundred rental properties. My community says absolutely not. We held our ground firmly for that. The other firmly held ground was the traffic signal. We now have traffic calming device there. But that traffic signal we've been asking for probably close to 20 years. We finally got the state, the county, the city, and the private developer on board to determine that a traffic signal needed to go there. It was to be divided 3 ways between the city, the county, and the developer, which was $150,000. Then we realized, because I guess it had gone on so long, there was a slight uptick in the price. So it went up to $75 a piece. So we had to fight for that as well. So that's kind of the 25-cent tour and all of this. My community is very comfortable with the number based on someone talking about a couple hundred originally. Originally, it was supposed to be purchasing, but because the tax credits, it took a while to get through that process through the state with them. It will be rental, but pricing, there will be different pricing packages. They have promised us that they will have extensive and aggressive classes for people who want to be put on the track of ownership, home ownership. So it's been a lot. And all I can say is what Medea says, hallelujah, we've gotten this far. So, please.
Alderman Payne was next, and then...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is on first reader, correct?
But still.
Have the rules been suspended?
No.
But we're dropping it. It's a motion to not, to take it off the agenda. Right?
It's to take it off the
Yeah,
agenda?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, sorry.
Officially.
Adopted on
Oh, okay, sorry, I apologize. No.
It's a
Point of
motion to take it off the agenda?
No, it's not. I'm sorry, my mistake, yeah.
But it's first reader at this
Yes.
point.
But you're owed an explanation. He's still owed an
Because, yeah,
explanation.
there's a time sensitivity to it for their grants and stuff like that, so.
And Madam City Manager, if you have anything to add to what she's been involved.
Right, so Alderman Pindell Charles is correct. I know I've been working on this one since probably the week I started. It's been a long time coming. So the Town Courts LLC is trying to close on all of their financing. The financing is a multitude of pieces that come together, which I did send to you all with the letter and analysis provided by Arundel Community Development Services. And they are trying to close in August or late July. So that's why they're asking, and we are asking you to both, to vote on this tonight, to move it from first reader to second reader and vote on it.
Alderman Arnett was next. No?
No, I was just going to mention the time sensitivity.
Okay. Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to thank the city manager for her work on the finances, and because for the public's benefit, I think we should acknowledge we did receive some emails about concerns about the finances, but spoke with the city manager today, and she went over, looked into those, and I feel confident that those have already been addressed and will be addressed continue to be looked at once the resolution passes. So we're not dismissing them. I think we've looked into them.
Okay. Alderman Finlayson was next.
Yes, thank you. I think the city manager provided us with a letter from Kathy Koch from ACDS, who is the Arundel Development Corporation expert guru. And she's put her blessing on it, so that gives me a great deal of comfort knowing that this is something we should promote at this time. Thank you.
Alderman Payne.
How did you arrive at the figure of 7672 for the pilot as opposed to 24,238? I mean, I understand, giving them a break for low-cost housing, no problem with that. It just seems that that's awfully low. It's, maybe 30%. I think it's a tad under 30%.
That's the analysis that was done by Arundel Community Development Services that I provided to you. It shows the feasibility of the project and what amount of pilot it takes to make the project work.
I understand that perfectly. Not.
I mean, it's an analysis of the revenues and the expenses and what amount makes the project work. So you don't just randomly pick a pilot amount, it's a calculated amount
Well, that's what I need.
based on projected revenues and expenses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One other thing I want to mention.
Alderman Pindell
They
Charles.
have also agreed, because they will be having a community center, that it will be open at least to the community. So that was a part of the community outreach. But this has been a long time coming.
That's good.
But this traffic signal has been my bane of my existence.
Mr. Mayor. What the details on the traffic signal? So it'll be on the street, Gibraltar.
It'll be on the
that
corner of
faces-
West and Gibraltar.
So now people will be stopping in front of like Sirius.
Dunkin' Donuts.
there are different types of traffic signals. It's not going to be, my understanding, it's not going to be one of those where you stop in the middle of the street and then you wait. It's going to be another signalization type effort. That's not my,
So from the existing site, the only way to get, again, with the plan with the homes, are they planning on to take the road that leads to what is now
from
Marnark?
Gibraltar to West Street.
So
and
the
they go right.
units will be facing the way of,
It's
they
gonna
won't be
be a-
facing West Street is what I'm asking. So
It's
we
going to
won't
be a
have-
horseshoe back there.
Okay. I thought that people will be turning on and off. Okay.
No, it's a horseshoe
Okay.
coming off onto West Street.
So there's a motion to adopt R-39-19 on first reader. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And can you add me as a co-sponsor, please? Thank you.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules to allow passage of resolution at the meeting of its introduction?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on that? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Is there a motion to adopt R-39-19 on second reader?
So moved.
Second.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Yes?
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Gay?
Yes.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett? Alderman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderman Payon?
I'd like to be a co-sponsor, yes.
Absolutely. Alderman Pendle Charles?
Aye.
Right, the ayes have it. That was out of the blue. Ms. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Next item on the agenda is legislative action on first reader, beginning with Resolution R-4019, Classic Wooden Boat Rendezvous and Race, docking fee waiver.
Is there a motion to adopt R-40-19 on first reader?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favour say aye.
What is it? I haven't found it on my,
Whoa, I'm looking for it. too.
It's the boat.
oh, this is the wooden boat? Yeah, okay.
Alderman Tierney?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just feel hesitant voting on this because there's no staff report or fiscal note. I'm just not comfortable until I see some fiscal analysis of it.
Do you have any, Jody? No? It's-
No, we just saw this legislation tonight, so we would have to ask Harbor Master. I'm not sure who would be controlling the amount of fees that would come in for that, so we'd have to get some information on it.
So it's on first reader, Ellie, is that all right?
That's what happens when you introduce on the floor.
Oh, okay.
Okay, there's a motion to adopt R-14?
This
Well,
is
we
time
did it.
sensitive.
Huh?
We already did it. It's only on first reading.
Okay, cool. All that? The city attorney? Oh, sorry. All those in favour say aye. Oh, aye. Alderman Finlayson?
Yeah, question, is this time sensitive? The date is the 20th through the 23rd of September?
It is somewhat sensitive, but as the city manager will explain, there's a number of moving parts that still have to be sorted out with the DNR dock and the other docks, and we're working with the harbor master as well.
So
So we just wanted to get it on first reader, and we'll sort through some of those details.
Okay, so it can wait until our first meeting in September?
It's our usual cut it close, but
Well, we've had 10 years, I mean, really.
I know.
It sounds exciting, Ross. So let's vote on this. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay.
No, I'm a no.
It's on first reader, so it passes.
No.
Miss City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda.
The agenda is completed.
All right, is there anything else for good order?
Just a
Alderman Finlayson.
reminder, I know you mentioned earlier, but we are doing a press conference at 1:30 tomorrow at PMRC to kick off the task force on the facility. So please join us.
What time tomorrow?
1:30. Thank you much.
I would definitely be there, but I have a dentist appointment at 2 o'clock.
Yep, Pip Moyer, yeah.
But tomorrow night is the recovery, who's going to the Recovery Annapolis thing at the Lighthouse Bistro?
Okay.
6 to 8.
Can you give some detail on
When
that?
we had the nice invitations.
Okay.
Yes, you going?
Alderman Savage.
So our colleague from Ward 5 is missing out on too much fun. I think we should think of something to nominate him for at our next meeting.
Okay, Alderman Payone, do you have anything to say?
Parking committee.
I do, Mr. Mayor. I move that we adjourn.
All those in
Second.
favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.